haven't heard anything to the contrary.
And that's enough for me. Hello, everyone! I am Zazubaar, and welcome to this week's episode of the Demons from Outer Space. Joining me, as always, I have Dillion McCandless, a.k.a. Super DM64.
Hi, everybody.
Yeah, so Dillion and I have a couple of drinks between us, so tonight's going to be
Yes,
an interesting episode.
been getting a little drinking done.
We have been, because when I got home, I had been working an 8-hour shift, and I was like having a hard time kind of formulating words because I was so tired. So I was like, I'll have a drink, get my lips loose. And then I was like, oh, I'm quite drunk. Okay. And Dylan's just drinking right out of the bottle, so you know, he doesn't give no fucks. So why should I give any fucks? But I had the first drink, so technically Dylan is the one who didn't give any fucks. He was like, I'm throwing caution to the wind. I'm throwing my vodka bottle into the winds of podcasting and seeing where it ends up. And usually that's on the ground, shattered into a million pieces. Just like your hopes and dreams. So Dylan looked at me like, he's not wrong. All right. So Dylan, this week we're doing two things, as we announced at the end of the third part of our epic 5-hour review of Jew Ranger. Thank you, by the way, to everyone who watched all three parts and stuck with us through the whole time. If anybody did do that, I don't actually know if anybody did.
Some people must have, but I mean, you look at the view counts, and there is definitely a drop off.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. Well, I mean, I think it makes sense because some people might just watch the first part and go like, "I'll come back to this later," and then a week later they're like, "I'll come back to this." So, I kind of expected that kind of different discrepancy in the view
I was
counts.
insane.
So.
I listened to all three of them in one sitting.
Jesus Christ, I didn't even do that. I edited them on 3 different days. Edited, not edited.
They edited them.
And then me. We're just talking about scene.
Bill, you drunk.
Go back to your me.
Shouldn't even have Andres here to be the straight man.
No, well, I mean, I'm not drunk. I'm. That says a drunk man. No, I'm a bit tipsy, but I'm not drunk. We'll see what happens. All right.
Have you ever watched movie fights on Screen Junkies?
No, I actually haven't. I've heard of it though.
I watched one of they do drunk episodes sometimes. I think it was the most recent one they did was a drunk episode of Movie Fights, and at one point the host Andy, he's like so drunk, and at one point he's looking at the categories, he's like, "Oh, this is be fun," and they were like, "What?"
That's great. But since we did a 5-hour review of Jew Ranger last week, you know, we thought we'd scale back a bit this week, which is why we decided to take 2 topics and merge them into one episode of the Demons from Outer Space to scale back.
Now you may be thinking 2 topics. This is going to be 10 hours, and I respond to you with, no.
Maybe. We'll see what happens. We didn't plan that last one to be 5 hours either. That just happened, kids.
No, we should have known.
That was a natural progression.
We should have known. It was a big topic. That was going to be...
No, I kind of expected it to be longer. I just didn't expect it to be 5 hours long. I mean, that is the longest thing I've ever recorded in one sitting, so...
Really?
I mean, it's... Oh, yeah, definitely. Without a shadow...
Broke a record, huh?
Yeah, no. It has to be. There's no way I've ever done anything else for 5 hours straight like that. We've talked on the phone for longer than 5 hours, but...
Oh, yeah. Stayed up all night once and watched The Lost Skeleton Cadaver.
You know, that wasn't weird. It was just that we recorded and did a structured video for 5 hours. I still can't believe we did it, and we were as intelligible as we was. Oh, boy. As we were. Oh, boy. Here we go. We were as intelligible as we was.
Syntax, Bill. Syntax.
Fuck me. All right.
It's all right. You're off. You're off. You're drunk in your garage. It's fine.
Oh, yeah. I should also mention that for the good viewers. I'm recording this week's episode in my garage for family reasons. We've got some family staying with us, and I didn't want to disturb them while they were sleeping because they're sleeping in the living room. So I decided for their sake that I would record in my garage, and it was actually a pretty easy thing to set up. I was actually kind of paranoid about it because I didn't know if I was going to be able to do it. Yeah. So I was going to just do it in my backyard. But Dylan was like, why don't you just go in your garage? And I was like, that's a good point.
I was like, in your garage, you'll have, like, I don't know, a roof.
Well, the reason why I wasn't going to do it was because I didn't think I had an outlet in here, like a place to plug in my laptop so it could charge while we were recording, but I actually do. I found one, so we're good on that front. So it actually turned out rather well. It's pretty much the same as recording in my room, except I'm in a slightly less comfortable chair. And as Dylan pointed out before, before we started recording, that is, there's a crap load of junk behind me instead of slightly more organized junk. So things are different here on this week's episode of DFOS, kids. So why don't we just jump right into it and show you how different things are by doing a segment we've been doing since the beginning of this season. So Dylan, would you like to find out what advancements have occurred in the field of science in the past rough month and a half?
Sure, let's do it.
All right, cool. So we haven't done this segment in a couple weeks.
Did a meteor full of atmospherium crash in the desert?
Not this week, Dylan, sadly. But we haven't done this segment in a while, and this will also be the last time we do it pre the end of the season, or for the last time for this season, which is a better way to say that. After we get back from G-Fest, we're doing our finale, and that will not have science in it because we got too much to do in that.
And before we go to G-Fest next week, we'll be doing the Universe 6 arc of Dragon Ball Super.
Woo! I gotta watch that still. Yay!
You got homework.
I do, but I got lots of time to do it because we're not recording next week, so I have 2 weeks.
We're not recording this?
So, no, we're doing it the week after. Because we're not recording DFOS on the week that we're at G-Fest, bro. Oh, wait. Oh, next... Oh, my God, I'm an idiot. Yes, so we are recording next week.
We're at G-Fest 2 weeks from now.
Oh, boy. All right, so I'm not drunk. I'm not drunk.
I mean, as touched as I am that you want me to be there next week, that's just not how time works.
Fair enough. That's not how planes happen. They don't go whenever you want them to.
No. Wish they did. Right. You think I'd be fucking here?
No. Oh yeah, no, definitely not. No, you'd be up here in a flash. I'd be in my garage recording podcasts all night. So
if planes happen whenever I wanted planes to happen, I'd be in like fucking Hawaii or some shit. I wouldn't be here.
Fair enough. Hurt my feelings. Why not? Why don't you? All right. So let's just. Oh boy, this is we are. How long are we into this thing? And I'm already like a mess. We are 9 minutes in, and I'm already falling apart.
I can't wait to hear your very intelligent thoughts on the film that we're reviewing later in the episode.
Oh yeah, because that's how we're breaking this episode. I mean, you already know what we're doing. We're gonna start off doing our science stuff, and then if you paid attention to last week's episode, or no, you know what? I'm gonna leave it to be a surprise just for anybody who actually watched the last part of our G-Ranger review and stuck until the very end. So you guys know what we're gonna talk about. None of y'all else do. So fuck you. No.
Yeah, no, let's get into the fucking thing we're supposed to be talking about.
Yeah, let's do it. All right, so Dylan, the first science article that I have for you is not an article, it's a video. And you couldn't watch it because it wouldn't buffer, so I'm just going to tell you what the video told me. Yeah. So it's on ajplus.com. I don't know who they are or if they're even remotely reputable, but unlike a lot of the articles that we talk about in here, this one has video. So that means that it definitely can't be faked, because you can't fake video, Dylan. It's impossible.
No, we don't have we don't have an entire billion-dollar industry set up around the idea of faking things on video. That's not a thing that happens.
Certainly not. Certainly not. Everything that a camera captures is 100% honest.
Right.
Dylan,
which is why I was cool for doubting the Patterson footage.
Oh yeah, definitely. That's why that is why you're an idiot. No other reason. So Dylan, a fucking leopard shark cloned itself, and science went, "Yup, that is a thing that happened." But AJPlus.com said shark reproduces solo. This shark just had a virgin birth. Say what? That's what AJPlus.com had to say about it.
Get bitten by a radioactive one of these sharks so that I can make clones of myself. That's an amazing power.
Well, Dylan just basically cloned itself. It didn't actually clone itself. So what happened here, virgin birth is more the term, because there was no fertilization of the egg involved. Well, I mean, I guess there was, but it wasn't. Didn't happen.
Self-fertilization.
Self-fertilization, right. So this shark, as far as I can figure, like, inserted its own genetic material into its own egg somehow. Obviously didn't mean to do this, or at least I don't think it did, and produced 2 offspring, both of which are basically clones of the mother. Now, they're not full-on clones. But there's a leopard shark in an aquarium, by the way. This isn't in the wild, which is why we were able to figure it out, that it happened. Because we wouldn't be able to know if it happened.
Because genetic variability, they would be exact clones, because certain genes might not get turned on or off. It's just like a regular insemination. It's just that It's the same genetic material being used. But, you know, mitosis and meiosis and shit, I'm not explaining this. I'm not a science professor.
He says in a podcast that's going to be half about science and the other half about science fiction. So he's more apt for that
I've
part.
had entirely too much vodka to explain sex to the good people. But
I've had just enough. So the idea here is that they're not even direct. It's not even just that's why they're not direct clones. They're also not direct clones because just the genes got all mixed up when they get put into the egg. The genes get all mixed up
yeah,
during the.
that's what I was saying, just
Okay.
in layman's terms.
In the laid man's terms, although this shark was not a laid man, it was an unlaid woolman shark. So,
Woolman shark.
Woolman shark. Woolman shark! All that jazz. So, yeah, no, Dylan, a shark fucking cloned itself. Are you surprised? Are you scared?
Well, I mean, this just confirms a theory that I first heard in 1975, which is that all they do is eat, swim, and make baby sharks. Apparently, that last part is more intense than we were aware of. But yeah.
Oh, definitely. So I brought this up.
Just the fucking, in Tremors, when they stop being graboids and they turn into the little walking things.
Oh yeah.
And they just eat until they have enough to make another one, and then they just belch out another one, and then they each go off and continue the cycle. Sort of like that.
But the one that they belch out is an ass blaster, right? That's what they're called, I think.
I'm not sure how the whole ass blasting thing works. I haven't watched the third Tremors in a while, but
God, Tremors 3 is such a fucking bizarre movie because I love it, but it's fucking garbage. I mean, it's ostensibly a pilot for the TV, because there's a Tremors TV series, right?
Oh yes, I am well aware.
Oh yeah, and it's basically a pilot for that, and it's garbage. But it's quite fun in how it uses Burt Gummer, and that's all. That's enough for me. So
Tremors 4, we went to the Old West.
Tremors 4 is legitimately garbage though, because a lot of people say that Tremors 4 is better than the other three, because it goes back to the roots. It's ostensibly like a remake of the first movie, but set in the Old West, and it has that old Western tone to it. It tells Burt Gummer's family origin story, all that. But God, it's such a cheap movie. You just look at their cheap recreation of the Old West, and I'm just like, I feel like I'm watching the episodes of Walker, Texas Ranger, where he has a dream and is in the Old West. You ever see those?
Yeah.
It's like that, and that's not good.
I've seen a lot of Walker, Texas Ranger in my day. Also, the graboids in 4 look a little less impressive, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, definitely. But in 4, they did show what graboids look like after they hatch. They're like these little tiny ones that leap out of the ground at you. They're kind of like face huggers, except they kill you. They don't just face hug. I mean, I guess face huggers technically kill you, but they kill you right away. The graboids.
This species has the most convoluted life cycle I've ever heard of. It way outclasses aliens in terms of just overly complicated life stages. Ugh.
Oh, I completely agree. Yeah. Also, just what is the point of the ass blaster? I don't understand. It just fire comes out of its ass, and it jumps up, and that's it.
Right.
They're not. They're the same thing as the Shriekers, except they're a little bit bigger, and they shoot fire out of their ass.
Right, which is an impressive trick considering that it hadn't had any Taco Bell beforehand. But I just don't understand why.
Presumably, we don't actually know, but presumably.
I just don't know why that would evolve in nature.
No, definitely
Remind
not.
me, do they use it as a weapon, or do they use it for propulsion?
They used it for propulsion.
Okay, so that sort of makes sense, I guess. It's like a biological.
Where are they propelling to that they need to get there via ass blasting?
I don't know, man. So sharks.
Yeah, sharks. Back to the conversation at hand. I brought this up because it actually reminded me of an episode of House that got into this idea. There's a scientific name for this phenomenon, because there is a phenomenon to this virgin birth idea. Where is the name of it? Ooh, wait, she just said it. Protogenesis?
Hmm.
I guess that makes sense. I guess the idea is, Proto being one, or Proto being first or original, and Genesis being birth or creation. So, I guess that's what that means. The original creation just being the same. I guess that's what that means. I don't know. That's how I broke it down.
To put it in simpler terms, life finds a way.
They showed that in the clip. They showed that clip from Jurassic Park in this little video. So, I mean, it's ajplus.com, Dylan. I expected them to do that.
You ever notice that he has the same line in Jurassic Park that he does in Independence Day? In first movies, there's a chase in which he goes, "Must go faster, must go faster."
What, he says that in Independence Day?
Yeah, when him and Will Smith are flying out of the mothership and the doors are closing on him.
Oh my God, you're right.
I'm sure it's done as a reference.
Oh yeah, almost definitely.
Because as a kid, I used to get confused trying to remember which movie that line was from, and now I know why. It's in both fucking movies.
I never remembered it. I mean, I just showed you guys. I did not remember that from Independence Day. I remember that from Jurassic Park.
He didn't say it in Resurgence, though. At least not that I'd heard.
What a shit sequel then. Only for that reason.
I mean,
no other reasons.
I mean, I was disappointed. There was a perfect scene he could have said it in too. Where he was driving a bus and there was like a kaiju and shit. Like it was.
He drives a bus at one point.
Yeah. Well,
That's dope.
Only after Judd Hirsch had driven the bus.
Judd Hirsch drove a bus. All right, I'm definitely gonna have to see this movie now. I was sort of like, but now I'm definitely there. I'm about it. I'm about seeing Judd Hirsch drive a bus.
Also, it sucks that Harvey Fierstein had to die in the first movie because I would have loved to have some old ass Harvey Fierstein running around in this movie yelling, "David! I count down to one, David!"
We're never gonna know if he called his lawyer. Oh no, he said forget about the lawyer. Oh yeah, he forgot about the lawyer. My bad.
Well, his doctor, but they wouldn't put him through to his house in the Hamptons.
Right.
We know he called his mother because he told her to gather all our stuff and go to Aunt Estes.
Well, thank God for that, Dylan. But did she make it to Aunt Estes?
I don't know, man.
We'll never know.
Boomer lived, but did she?
I don't know, man. We'll never know. She's not in the sequel, presumably. They don't catch up with Harvey Fierstein's mom and Aunt Esta.
No, I mean, no.
I would have. If I was directing Independence Day 2, I would have put that in.
Although there is one moment where this teenage girl says that her parents are in Florida. What if she's related to Harvey Fierstein?
Holy shit.
Know who should have come back in this movie but didn't? Randy Quaid's kids. What's going on with them?
Oh yeah, did they mention his character at all?
Not even.
Wow! He was the one who killed the aliens, right?
I'm pretty sure they didn't mention him. Although there was one shot near the beginning where there's this huge memorial thing and like it has all these names written on it of people who died in the War of '96. His name might have been on there. I didn't.
He's got to be in there. He has to be.
I didn't bother to read.
He blew up the ship himself.
He figured out how to blow up the aliens, and then they got on the wire and told everybody how to bring those bastards down.
Right.
Oh, Robert Loggia got to have a cameo before his death, so that was good. That was nice.
Who?
Robert Loggia. He was the general in the first movie who said the line I just said, like, tell him how to bring those bastards down. He was always walking around with President Pullman.
He was very quiet in that movie, I noticed.
Yeah.
But I know who you're talking about. Yeah. He wasn't the is Shady vice president in it?
He was the
one who knows about Area 51 but not the president?
He wasn't the vice president. He was the SecDef.
Oh, all right. So that actually makes a little bit more sense as to why the president didn't know about Area 51.
And he got fired near the end of the first movie. So no, he's not in the second movie.
But I was just asking, like, if he had a cameo or if he died or whatever. Also, that seems to be a lot of what they did with the cameos is a lot of people just show up to die.
Also, I know who Roland Emmerich is voting for in the upcoming election. You know why? Because in this movie, the president is a woman.
Oh, boy.
Subtle. Very subtle.
He's, yeah, there was a lot of, like, really weird, like, on-the-nose and really shittily on-the-nose social commentary that he did. Because I also saw a piece of viral marketing for it that was, like, you know, fight for alien rights for Area 51. Is that in the movie? Where it was like a PSA about, you know, having human rights for the aliens that are in Area... Because Area 51 is still active in Independence Day Resurgence, right?
Oh, yeah. It's like a big base.
Right. I presumed that.
They have the final battle at Area 51, just like in the first movie.
Spoilers.
Oh, shit.
That's okay. No, I don't think anybody actually can. It happened the same way in the first movie, so it's not a
Anybody
spoiler.
who anybody
It's not a spoiler. It's a reminder.
anybody out there, for the most part, that wanted to see Independence Day Resurgence has probably already seen it by now.
Except for me.
Oh, you know what? You
Yeah.
know what's sad? I don't think it's made enough money. I don't think they're gonna get to make that third movie. And damn it,
No, and they set it up really hard, don't they?
they really do. It's the last line of the movie is just direct setup, where Brent Spiner's like, "We are gonna kick some serious alien ass," and then cut to credits. And I don't think they're gonna get to make
They
that.
put that in the trailer though.
I don't think they're gonna get to make that third movie, which actually kind of saddens me because as much of a mess as this was, it was just batshit crazy enough to where I was like, "Yeah, I want to see where they go on a third one. Fuck it, Bogat." We've gotten 4 Transformers movies. That man didn't even deserve to make anything else after Pearl Harbor. Fuck it. Give me another Independence Day. Make 20 of them. Fuck it.
I'm definitely about it. I just don't think that they will because this one. I mean, when you have an Independence Day movie that opens at number 2, yeah, no, the odds for that aren't very good. But all right, Dylan, let's. That's pretty much it for the sharks. So a shark gave birth to 2 basic clones. Basically, they're clones. They're not actually clones, but they're the best thing that you could possibly have to come out of a vagina in terms of a clone.
So
That's not true.
so shark
They're close enough.
so a shark cloned itself, and my response was, "Oh,
Yeah. Your response was, that is a thing that happened.
indeed." Yeah.
Fair enough. That is indeed a thing that happened. So I want to move on to something that you may find a bit more interesting.
Oh,
Dylan, here's what scientists found when they opened a cave that had been isolated for more than 5 million years.
is this the one where like they found this whole ecosystem, like all these creatures in there that they never knew existed before?
Yeah, no, this is an older story. I meant to talk about this weeks ago, but because we weren't doing science articles, I didn't get the chance.
I think when this
So we're going
happened,
to talk about it now.
I think when this happened, I actually shared something about it.
Oh, okay, so there you go. So you already have some thoughts on this. So the inhabitants
Yes,
of the movie...
my response is, "Huh."
Just as your response to all things. This, what we're reviewing tonight,
Oh, that's the thing.
that's more... I'll have that more when we talk about the thing we're reviewing. Spoilers.
David,
We'll
oh my god.
uh,
Next time David actually shows up to an episode of SOS, I'm gonna be like, "David, oh my god, David."
Me too. Just because you said that, I'm gonna do it 10 times more annoying. I gotta call David. Forget about David. The inhabitants of the Mobile Cave are like no others. The otherworldly conditions of the Romanian cave, just a few miles from the Black Sea, oh, so not the White Sea though, have been sealed up for around 5.5 million years. Dylan shaking his head at me. Although the air is poisonous.
There go the property values.
The air is poisonous and unbearably humid. The cocktail of factors has created a gold mine for biologists. Fewer than 100 people have delved into the cave, according to BBC Earth. It was it's the British, so we can't take anything they're saying seriously. They're always fucking leaving unions and shit. Topical political joke.
They're always doing that shit. Taxating people without representing them.
They've been about that for a long time. But Dylan, aside from Britain shenanigans, it was only discovered.
You look like fucking Stay Puft Marshmallow Man right now, bro.
Who, me?
Yeah, there's like a glow. It's insane. Look at your Skype shit.
It doesn't look like that on my end.
Really?
No.
I don't know, man.
I look like just a guy. I guess if I like go back into the light, Dylan's looking at the vodka like, what's in this? Is this actually paint thinner?
One of those moments in a movie, the classic moment where somebody's like drinking and then they see some crazy shit going on and they're just like,
yeah, no, you definitely. I actually put that in my movie, Werewolf of Carl Place. There's a moment. I don't know if he did that, but there was a moment where there was a guy drinking and he was like, he had a moment where he paused and then he just started singing again because he was singing. Anyway, irrelevant. I don't know why I brought it up. It was only discovered by humans in 1986 when workers of the Socialist Republic of Romania were looking for new ground to build a nuclear power plant. Oh my god, can you imagine if they would have put that nuclear power plant there? There's fucking crazy mutations that would have come out.
Fucking Hedorah and Destroya.
Fucking actual Godzilla, dude. so they were going to build a nuclear power plant in 86. So it was found all the way back in 86, which makes the title bullshit.
This whole plot.
Presumably.
This whole plot sounds like the plot to Rodan. Like.
Oh, yeah, it is very Rodan. But I guess it's not a lie, because the title just says, here's what they found when they opened the cave. Not, they just found the cave. So, alright, fine.
Sure.
Fair enough. Oh! The title is actually accurate, because they own... So, okay, here we go. We're reading. Nowadays, it is blocked off... Let me just read the rest of the article, and we'll figure it out together. Nowadays, it is blocked off by the authorities and only accessible with special permission. Although the central caverns are naturally guarded by a series of vertical shafts and narrow limestone tunnels. Once in the depths of the cave, the air contains half of the amount of oxygen than usual and is high in carbon dioxide and hydrogen sulfide. It is also pitch black and hasn't seen sunlight for at least 5.5 million years, which it seems like is one of the primary factors that led to these creatures evolving this way. Because, I mean, if you know anything about biology, you'll know that...
I would be interested to know if us opening the cave has had any adverse effects on this ecosystem, because...
It probably has.
It's been exposed to open air for the first time ever.
It probably has. I mean, if it's really deep in the cavern, I mean, it can't be that... the air can't be that different. So, I mean, it's definitely... I'm sure it had an effect, but it probably isn't that drastic, only because they're already pretty deep down when they opened it. So, you're right. Probably just not to an extreme extent. But you know, the bottom of the ocean has impact, and the fact that that's pitch black has impacted those creatures immensely. So, and the water, you know, additionally. So, you know... The pressure, I mean, that sounded dumb. It's like the water, Dylan. The water impacted the fish when they evolved. Didn't you know that?
I had no idea that water had any impact on fish.
I meant the pressure, though, in particular.
Right.
But within this harsh environment, meaning the cave, we're back to the cave now. We're back to the article.
Right.
What
if they found, like, dinosaurs in there?
I mean, it would be the plot to Journey to the Center of the Earth, the new one, because there aren't dinosaurs in the original versions. There's only dinosaurs in the new one.
I recently watched the one with the lizards with the shit taped to their heads.
Oh, yeah. Oh, God, yeah. I approve. Animal abuse, I'm about it. Scientists have so far identified 48 species, which are pretty... I mean, I don't know how big this environment is. Did they mention it? No, they didn't really mention how big it is. But that sounds like a lot. Among the creatures are an array of spiders, water scorpions. Holy shit. There are water scorpions are a thing?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Don't you remember walking with prehistoric beasts? Or no?
But I knew that they were a thing, but I thought they died out a long time ago.
Well, I did too.
Oh, so they're back, Dylan. They're back.
Oh, yeah.
A water scorpion story.
Yeah, I was about to make that joke, damn it.
I took it from you.
I
dove in there and I grabbed it. Intercepted.
Great minds. Great minds.
Well, okay minds, I think. They're fine.
Depends on how you define great. Man.
Depends on how much alcohol we've had. And tonight... So Dylan, there are also pseudo-scorpions, which aren't as good, presumably, as water scorpions. They're only a little bit of scorpion.
Oh, yeah. They're like pseudo-intellectuals, you know. You would never take them over an actual intellectual. Because
they have no idea what they're scorpioning about.
Yeah, pseudo-intellectuals. They're just pseudo-scorpions who don't know how the scorpion world works, and they live in their scorpion mom's basements.
And desperately trying not to be eaten by them, because that's what arthropods, oh my god, arthropods do. Arthropods. I mean, I wasn't wrong in identifying that as a class of animal, just the wrong class.
Perfect description for crab people.
Yes! Dylan, you need to make a movie called Anthropod. You have to do it, not me.
Why me?
Because I don't want to do it. Centipedes, leeches, and isopods.
You're gonna put that on my shoulders? You're the one who's actually made movies.
I don't know if I've actually made movies. It's debatable. That's
true. It's debatable.
33 of these species are totally unique to this one cave. So that's 15 that are not special, and they can fuck off. Most of the creatures in the cave have no vision and lack pigment. After all, who needs sight or to be pretty in the pitch darkness? That's true. I would do well in this cave then. So that's that. It sounded pretty attractive to me so far. Aside from all the
So much
spiders.
pseudo pussy. I mean, you.
All the pseudo pussy you want, my friend. I mean, it's all via arthropods, so that's certainly pseudo pussy.
I don't know if they have pussies.
No, they absolutely don't. That is a thing that arthropods, by virtue, don't have.
Okay.
Yeah, no. Remember, they just inject right into the skin. They're just like they have like needle penises. They're just like
Right.
they just get in there.
Probably should have known that. I was a biology student at some point. I should have known that.
I knew that for other reasons. As if this world was not alien enough, it's one of the only known ecosystems that relies on chemosynthetic bacteria. Most ecosystems use photosynthesis. Oh, interesting. Okay. Most ecosystems use photosynthesis to harness energy. However, since there is no natural sunlight in the cave, the bacteria need to get their energy and carbon directly from chemical reactions, such as the oxidation of sulfide or the oxidation of ammonium. But how the animals ended up in the cave and became isolated remains unclear to scientists. Well, I mean, I imagine a bunch of spiders and shit just got trapped in this cave-in, like, back 5.5 million years ago. And this is what was the result.
Or Hollow Earth theory.
Oh, I mean, that's true as well. They could have been placed there by a bunch of our ancestral, under-earth ancestors.
To quote a very intelligent
man. Our ancestral ancestors, as I said.
To quote a very intelligent man. Aliens.
Oh, Dylan fucked his hair up for that too. That was he committed to that joke.
I did. I commit to tons of shit that the people at home can't see. But then when I promise them a thing
marriage, it's crazy.
Then when I promise them a thing that they can actually enjoy, I usually don't follow through.
Exactly. Yeah, that's usually how this works. So it's very likely that the bacteria have been there a lot longer than 5 million years, but that the insects became trapped there around that time, which is what I said. So, I called it first. Fuck you, J. Colin Merle, who said that quote. He's a microbiologist from the University of East Anglia, which is a place I don't even know, so definitely fuck him. He knows what New York is, so that makes me better than him, Dylan. I don't actually know if he knows what New York is, but presumably.
I see your logic here.
Definitely.
I don't endorse it, but I do see what you're going for.
Good. That's all that matters to me. They could have simply fallen in and become trapped when the limestone cast dropped, sealing the cave until it was discovered again in 1986, which is that makes the most sense to me. There are still many mysteries that lie deep within the mobile cave. Ooh, my lights just flickered. They did it again. But even after just 30 years of knowing it exists, researchers still have many more inhabitants to discover, some of whom could hold massive insights into evolutionary biology and even the nature of life itself. Ooh, very ominous, Dylan.
They went a little Colin Clive there at the end.
They did a bit, yeah. God, I know what it's like to be God, or whatever. I forget the line he actually says. It's been a while since I've watched Frankenstein.
The only line anybody ever actually remembers for any period of time is, "It's alive!
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!" But the line after that is the God line, and that's so much more interesting. I remember the line now. It's, "In the name of God, now I know what it's like to be God."
Right. Which seems
a bit presumptuous. I mean, he made one living thing out of things that were already alive. So, God made a whole world in 7 days.
Right,
bro.
right. If you examine the God myth and you examine the Frankenstein book, while certainly impressive, one of them does seem to.
One of them seems to come up a bit short in terms of accomplishments.
Yeah.
When it comes to comparing himself to actual God. But not Dylan. That story's pretty sick. What do you think?
I mean, yeah, there are things in the earth. It's good to know.
Indeed.
Graboids could be real. I don't know, man.
I mean, these basically are graboids, except they don't grab you, presumably. But I mean, this is the whole thing with the graboids in that movie, is that they don't see because they don't have to. They just kind of know where they're going. I mean, presumably it's all based on vibrations. They live in the... Oh, no, it is based on vibrations. They're all based on sound. I forgot about that. That was the point of that movie.
Yeah. It's like the same thing to avoiding a T-Rex from Jurassic Park, except it's a vibration thing instead of a sight thing. You gotta
But no, I find this shit crazy interesting. I find the impact of evolution on other animals to be some of my favorite type of science, because it's always a very good indicator of what aspects of original Darwinian evolution still apply in our modern age of science, and then which which aspects don't. But this is a good case for a lot of the broad sweeping ideas behind Darwinian evolution. So I always find this shit crazy interesting for that. And it's also just insanely cool just to have animals that were impacted by being trapped in a cave for 5.5 million years and still surviving and thriving and turning into these wholly different life forms. It's incredible. Life is amazing, and I'm just amazed by it. So that's an awesome story.
I mean, I'm always glad to hear of them making new strides in these fields, because I truly believe that one day these fields will lead us to have superpowers, and I'm all about that. So,
Dylan wants to not have eyes and to live in a world where you don't have to look pretty.
the second one's not a bad idea, but yeah.
I wouldn't mind living in that world, like I said before. But that's awesome. I've been meaning to bring this up for a while because I knew we'd get some mileage out of it, and we certainly did. So I'm glad to have finally brought that up. Now they mentioned water scorpions before in this article. I'd be interested to know how much water is in that cave. Like, we don't really get a wide shot of the cave in this article. It's all just close-ups on the animals, and they look pretty fucking crazy. But I would be interested to know, like, what the cave itself actually looks like, you know? Like, I'd like to know how much water is in it, like what the arrangement is, like how much space these animals have to live and breathe. Like, they don't really give a good indication of the size or the scope of it. So I wish they would have done that, but still crazy interesting. But all right, Dylan, let's move on then, shall we? I've got 2 more articles. I think I'm gonna get rid of one because it doesn't look that interesting, but we'll see. Here, Dylan, I'm gonna give you 2 headlines. You choose. So the first one, ooh, you're gonna be more partial to one of these, but it's still gonna be a choice. So you'll see. I think you'll still have something to go on here. So the first one is, we just learned a new secret about the Great Pyramid of Giza.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then the other one is, new funeral service dissolves dead people and dumps remains into sewer.
I mean, well, that's a good idea.
I know, Dylan. I know it's a good. I know it's a big choice for you between pyramids and people dying. So I know that those are 2 things that you love. So be smart about your decision.
They're kind of the polar opposites of each other, also.
Well, they're both about burying dead bodies, so, you know.
No, one is about entombing a dead body in a giant fucking structure, and the other one is about just dissolving them and dumping them out with the shit, which is actually a pretty good idea. We waste so much room on cemeteries.
One is about the sanctity of life, and one is about we gotta save room.
Yeah.
One is about convenience, one is about royalty. So which one do you want?
I mean, I think the problem is, I have a feeling you're a little bit more interested in number 2, aren't you?
I'm so much more interested in number 2, Dylan.
My problem is, I feel like the title of that article told me everything I need to know.
But don't you want to know who's doing this and why?
I know why. It just
I don't
makes
know if that's
good business sense.
But that's not. But I'd also like to know who's doing it. Why are they doing it? Like, or not why, but who's agreeing to this? I mean, I get no. You know what? I guess you'd agree to it so that way you don't have to pay for a fucking grave.
Yeah. I mean, shit.
I guess.
Do that at home in the bathtub. That worked out well for Jesse Pinkman.
No, it did not work out well for Jesse Pinkman. Do you not remember Breaking Bad?
I do remember Breaking Bad. I was being facetious.
Oh, gotcha.
But I don't know. What is the secret of the Pyramid of Giza, though?
Do you want to find out? Dylan, I left the choice up to you, so I guess that's what we're going with.
That's a fucking Indiana Jones title, man. Indiana Jones and the sequel. The sequel. The secret.
Indiana Jones and the sequel. The vague, undefined sequel.
Indiana Jones and the secret of the Pyramid of Giza. I don't know, man.
It's a long title.
What the fuck is it?
All right, let's find out. Let's find out what the secret to the Great Pyramid of Giza is. This will also work as a somewhat decent lead-in to our next topic because, well, you'll see. So, Dylan, let's find out what the secret is about the Great Pyramid of Giza. So, the Great Pyramid of Giza is seemingly so well built that explanations of how the ancient Egyptians constructed it over 4,500 years ago have been filled with controversy, confusion, and mysticism, and aliens, of course, right? Yeah.
Or,
oh my God! Guess what the next line in the article is?
Or apocalypse.
And sometimes even aliens. That's the next line in the article is. They knew.
It's not as crazy as
They
it
knew.
sounds when you look at the evidence. No,
And when you look at X-Men Apocalypse, what?
Right, yeah.
The aliens had nothing to do with that in that movie anyway, as far as we can tell. The study by the Glenn... Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I skipped an article. I skipped a line. However...
If the next word after Glenn is Beck, then this loses all credibility.
No, it's not even spelt that way, and it's not Glenn as in a name. It's Glenn as in, like, a foundation.
Oh.
However, according to a new study, the engineering behind it might not be as bang-on as we once thought. Dylan, your bang-on interpretation of the Pyramid of Giza...
This was written...
It might be off.
This was written by a British person, obviously.
Clearly, yeah.
Not quite as bang-on as we thought we were. Yeah, smashing job.
So Dylan, are you ready for the Great Pyramids of Giza to not be quite as bang-on as you thought they were?
I mean, let's do it, man.
How bang-on were they in your mind already?
Sounds like something the Human Torch would say if he was a porn star.
Bang on! Ugh, my powers, they're fading. Bang off.
They're fading.
They're fading. That's every fucking second in the Human Torch's career as a superhero has been going, flame on! Oh no, my fire! It's not working as good as I thought. I have to flame off. He's such a pussy. I hate Johnny Storm. Anyway, the study...
You have a very strong opinion of Johnny Storm.
Fuck that blonde prick. The study by the Glenn Dash Research Foundation and the Ancient Egypt Research Associates, that's quite a mouthful, has discovered... It should say have discovered, but they say has here. So the British can fuck off with their goddamn poor use of English.
The study was the subject of the sentence. The study has discovered. The study by blah, 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 blah has discovered.
Oh. My bad.
Mr. Writer Man.
I'm not a writer. I occasionally just put words on paper and have people read them. They've discovered...
You may have just defined writer, but go ahead.
Well, good then. I'm a writer then. Yay, my life has been fulfilled. Has discovered the Great Pyramid doesn't have a perfectly square base. Dylan, are the Great Pyramids as bang on as you thought, now knowing that their bases aren't quite as square as you thought?
It's ancient fucking Egypt. It was built by Jews, you know. They were trying to save some dough. So they didn't.
Oh Christ!
So they didn't square it up, you know.
Oh God. They didn't. They were rushing. They didn't use a straight edge.
It's true. It's true.
Oh God. With one particularly lopsided west-facing edge, so the part facing the west was really fucked up. So they got to the west part and they were like, "Oh, do you guys really want to? Do you guys want to make this straight?"
This is still pretty impressive, though, given that Apocalypse did this all with his mind. So.
Certainly. I mean, when he got to that part, he was just like, he started thinking about all the bitches he was gonna get later, about all the banging on he was gonna do. Oh, yeah. So he just started. So he got lopsided because he just started thinking about them dirty thoughts that started resembling his weird mutant penis.
Hmm.
We don't know what their dicks look like, and we didn't find out. We'll talk about that later, though. So anyway.
Was that what you were hoping to discover when you watched X-Men?
That's what I wanted to learn. That was my big question.
I wonder if there are any X-Men porno spoofs.
Oh, definitely. I've seen them.
There's got to be.
To Rule 34.
I recently learned that 10-inch Mutant Ninja Turtles is a thing, so there's got to be some.
Oh yeah.
There's got to be some X-Men shit out there.
There was a fairly high-profile Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle porno parody that just came out. That like people reviewed and shit. People talked about it.
Maybe
on videos.
Maybe it was 10-inch Mutant Ninja Turtles. I know this.
It may have been called that. Maybe is this a newer one? Because this is new.
I don't know. I haven't watched the video. I just saw that the Cinema Snob had reviewed it, and that's when I learned that it was a thing.
That is probably the new one then, because I think that was the one. Because he already reviewed one, like a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles porno parody, like years ago.
Oh, he's reviewed all of the porn.
Thank God somebody has to.
Yes.
So, engineer Glenn Dash and Egyptologist Mark Lenner looked for the original edges to the 138-meter, 455 feet tall Great Pyramid of Giza, the largest of the three pyramids found in Giza, just across the river. Jesus Christ, that is a lot of descriptors. Found just across the River Nile from Egypt's capital, Cairo.
Right. Yeah.
So basically, they found it and they looked at it and they determined shit. When it was first constructed under the rule of Pharaoh Khufu, badass motherfucker as he was, the pyramid was lined with a white limestone casing. Over the centuries, the outer casing was stripped for use in other building projects and left the pyramid how we see it now. Much of this outer edge is too damaged to be of any use, however. The researchers managed to pinpoint 48 points of the original boundary around the pyramid's 920-meter periphery. Using the data, they plotted out the lengths of the pyramid's four sides. The east side measured 230.295 to 230.373 meters. And then that gets broken down into feet. I should have just read that. However, the west side was about 750 feet and 760 feet. That means that the west side could be more than 14 centimeters longer than the east. How bang on is that doing? It's a whole 14 centimeters longer than the east part. So not too bad, considering it was built 4,500 years ago.
Look, all I'm saying is they're known for banking, not for building. You know what I mean?
Right.
This is not playing to their strengths.
They're known for banging, not for building. As the researchers say in the study, the data show. Oh, that's weird. The data show that the Egyptians possessed quite remarkable skills for their time. You don't fucking say. We can only speculate as to how the Egyptians could have laid out these lines with such precision using only the tools that they had. Dylan, I'm thoroughly unimpressed by the Egyptians in this article.
Bro, this is still really fucking impressive when you consider the fact that they live in fucking Tatooine and they got, like, no tools. All they have is an army of slave labor at their disposal.
2 sons and no women. It's a miracle that they were able to even get only one side lopsided.
Exactly.
Or just have one lopsided side, rather. Nah, that's a revelation if I ever knew one.
When you look at things that other desert-dwelling peoples have done over the years, there's no comparison.
Gotcha. All right, so Egypt is still fairly impressive, but I don't know. This revelation could have been a bit more revelation-airy, I suppose, is what you might say. Whoa. I don't think that's a word, but it is now. So deal with it.
You could have said
Dylan,
revolutionary or revealing.
Holy shit! I could have just said revolutionary. I'm really tired. I apologize, people. Oh, we shouldn't do these so late.
It's the only time, man.
I know, that's the shitty thing.
It's the only time when the stars align and the
It's the only time that the stars align. They align on no other times.
No, never.
All the stars.
Never.
In
special news, the moon can be seen from the Earth tonight.
Oh shit!
This is the first
Don't
time
miss it.
This is the first time this has happened since last fucking night.
Don't miss it, kids. You'll regret it if you miss it. It only happens once in a generation. But yeah, no, lopsided side of the pyramid, Dylan. What do you think?
Well, that's a bummer.
I didn't know that the Egyptians, I guess more of the revelation to me anyway, is that the Egyptians had like a limestone covering over what we see now. So the pyramids didn't always look like this. Like when you see them depicted in most like versions, like they look pretty much exactly as they do now. They just look a little bit more in like better shape.
Yeah.
But I guess they didn't look like that. They might have been a different color for all we know.
Yeah, it all would have looked wildly different at the time. I mean,
right.
The Sphinx would have still had a nose and shit. And yeah, I mean, this particular pyramid had a limestone covering. I don't think that was standard for all pyramids, but this particular pyramid would have had a beautiful limestone covering. It would have been magical.
And we would have loved it. All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for what we learned about the Great Pyramid of Giza. And Dylan, I think that's going to do it for this week's advancements in the field of science. And that's going to do it for our Science Blowout. And that'll do it for that segment for this entire fucking season. So we'll be back with
what a very apathetic conclusion to our
I know, right?
space.
To our science blowout.
Yes.
So Dylan, we learned things. Maybe we learned things. But we certainly know things. I don't know what I'm trying to say.
I don't know
But
where was this going.
I was just trying to say that we're done.
Okay.
So
You
Dylan,
can just say that, you know.
I know I could have just said that, but you know me, I have to stretch everything out for like a million fucking years. So
So now that
I couldn't just say that.
now that we've learned something about how evolution works, let's talk about the way we wish evolution worked.
Yeah. So Dylan, do you want to intro this since this was sort of half your idea, and also this is technically your wheelhouse since you're a pretty big fan of this franchise. So
Well,
why don't you take us into our part 2 of this week's episode and our entertainment based topic, because we're doing both things this week, the science based and the entertainment.
technically this was your idea, Bill.
Shit.
Technically this was your idea, Bill.
Right.
Because you were like, we were doing the episode where I was talking about X-Men Apocalypse, and you were like, dude, I would love to like review all the movies with you, and I was like, yeah, let's do it. And so anyway,
Now we're doing it.
so today we are going to be talking about Bryan Singer's 2000 superhero entry, The First X-Men.
The first X-Men. X-Men, the actual first class.
Yes, just X-Men. It's just the movie is just called X-Men.
No, I'd like it to just be called just X-Men.
Just just fucking X-Men, all right?
Just. You got a problem with that?
You got a problem
That's the subtitle.
You got a problem with just fucking X-Men?
No, that's the tagline. Just fucking X-Men. Deal with it. You got a problem with just fucking X-Men.
No, but this came out in the year 2000. I mean, this was even pre-Spider-Man. Like, people think of, like, Spider-Man, the first Sam Raimi Spider-Man, as, like, kicking off sort of the modern era of superhero films. But nah, man. This was before it, and I think, when was Blade?
Blade was before this.
Blade was before this. So, I mean,
Blade was 97.
We'd already had Blade making some waves, and but the weird thing about Blade is, like, yes, it's from a comic book, but it's not. I wouldn't exactly call him a superhero, or I wouldn't exactly call it a superhero story.
Blade was never even the primary focus of the comics that he appeared in until much later and until this movie came out.
Yeah.
That movie is more like an original story inspired by a character from the Marvel universe, which was the idea, because they thought that would be cheaper than to do a full-fledged adaptation of like a really big Marvel property.
Right.
Which is what this is, more so. Although it too kind of takes elements of the X-Men mythos and the Marvel universe and sort of grafts it into its own thing. But yeah, Dylan, we're going to be talking about the original X-Men.
This is the first time we get like an actual like Marvel superhero movie in the new millennium. There had been some misfires in the 90s.
The only straight up legit theatrical release that they had ever done was actually Howard the Duck. Nothing else. That's it.
Yeah, that classic.
So and Blade, of course. So you had that, and then you had Blade, and then you have this, which makes this interesting because it's basically the first ever live-action Marvel superhero movie. And
again, there have been some misfires with the fucking Roger Corman Fantastic Four, or whatever the story is with that shitty old version of Captain America that I've seen pictures of but never actually watched.
Oh yeah, no, that was officially released, but just on VHS. So this is the first live-action, theatrical, big-budget superhero movie ever put out based on a Marvel property.
And there had been TV movies with the David Hasselhoff, Nick Fury, and the Hulk movies based on the TV series. But yeah, this is their first foray into big theatrical films, something that even DC had only done a little bit of, really, with the Superman and the Batman films.
Right, which this movie not only exists, but is certainly should be partially thankful to the Superman franchise, because the producer, Bryan Singer, by the way, big Superman fan, very much so inspired by the original Superman movie to both take on this project, and of course when he did Superman Returns, we shouldn't necessarily be thankful to that franchise for that. But Richard Donner, who directed the original Superman, is an executive producer on, I believe, all of the X-Men movies, certainly the first one. Right. I know his wife has been more directly involved in all of them, but
no, I keep saying
Richard Donner in particular.
I keep saying Marvel. Obviously, this was Fox doing all this, but still, for Marvel as a company, this was a big thing that they finally had characters in the movies.
They were very on board with this because, again, they had never had a big budget theatrical release before. And more than that, the X-Men are crazy popular, especially at the time. Recently, I listened to an audiobook. I've mentioned this on other podcasts before, called Marvel Comics: The Untold Story. And in that, they talk about how, at first, like in the 60s and into the 70s, the X-Men were like second stringers. Nobody gave a fuck about them. Their book was canceled.
Yeah, it was after they rebooted it and they brought in Wolverine and shit that it really started to pick up steam.
Right. Chris Claremont brought the X-Men back famously, and he was the godfather of all X-Men properties for like 20 years. And then with the wave of Rob Liefeld and all the Image guys that came into Marvel and kind of shook things up, they kind of took it away from him and kind of ruined it.
All you had to do was say the name Rob Liefeld, and I just sort of winced with pain.
I saw it. I was like, ooh, was that an Image or Rob Liefeld or Chris Claremont? What was that wince at?
At least we had the 90s X-Men cartoon to pick up the fucking slack.
Which is also partially why I think this movie was the first Marvel property that got greenlit or that went into production and came out because that cartoon was really popular, and a lot of people do still consider that to be the best animated thing that Marvel has done. I don't think that, but that's what a lot of people think.
And you can tell that they don't really know how far they want to go because this is the first one. They don't know how far they want to go with like making it comic booky, or do they want to go the route that Blade went and sort of go with like a darker version of the comic book story. And they wind up doing something that's sort of in the middle, I would say. And then a year later, we get Sam Raimi just full on giving you fucking Spider-Man.
Well, as full on as you can get with a modern day Spider-Man movie. I mean that movie is ridiculous, and this movie is also ridiculous, by the way.
Oh yeah.
Just because it sort of plays it realistically, or not realistically, but just sort of it very much so sets its color palette and its universe in the real world.
It plays itself seriously, and also even though it's
and so do X-Men comics, to be fair.
And even though it's ridiculous from a real world standpoint, it's very internally consistent. I feel they have
it's played very earnestly.
Yeah, they have their rules for their universe, and they stick to those pretty well.
There is definitely a very clear sense of internal logic here. But yeah, no, there is definitely.
I think you'll agree. The X-Men films get really fucking silly at a point, and it's not yet. We'll get to that.
But this one's pretty silly though, Dylan. I mean, fucking Toad is like the most he's crazy. Like Toad is insane, and it's not even just because the character from the comics is insane and they adapted that for this.
Hasn't Toad always been
insane? But they changed him a lot from the comics, didn't they?
Well, early 2000s comic book adaptation.
And this is this is a rather loose adaptation of the X-Men. The costumes are completely different. The sort of status quo and the sort of basic premise is pretty much the same. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's pretty much just Charles Xavier has a school for people who are born with superpowers. He has a superhero team to protect the school and to protect regular people and mutants. That's pretty much it. Go. And a bunch of characters get introduced to that world in the story, which just happens to be Wolverine and Rogue.
And I think the film does a pretty good job of introducing one to this world.
I think that's probably the best thing that it does.
Because you gotta remember that a lot of people in 2000 are going to see this movie not even knowing what the fuck it is, and sort of getting introduced to this whole concept through this movie. And I think it does a really good job of that. With the fantastic opening where we get to see a bit of Magneto's backstory. And then we cut to Jean Grey's thing at the was it the UN she was giving the speech at, or no, just Senate, the Senate, wherever the fuck she was talking about.
I think she was just in the Senate, yeah, because I know the UN is at the end of the movie.
Right. But yeah, so I think by and large, as far as introducing moviegoers to the X-Men universe, or more aptly to the X-Men premise, I think it does that rather well. And one thing that struck me about this movie, or always strikes me when I watch it, because you think of the X-Men now, and it's this huge, overblown franchise, and the films are like nearly 3 hours long, and they're just packed with so much shit. The first X-Men movie is so fucking small by comparison.
It's super tiny.
It's so small and contained. There are only 4 X-Men in the movie. I mean, we get to see students who will become X-Men later on, but the actual team of X-Men that go out to fight Magneto at the end of the film, there's only 4 of them. and X-Men is now is famous for having like a million fucking characters. Um,
So the four are Wolverine, Cyclops, Jean Grey, and Storm, and that's it?
yeah,
Oh, you know what? I'm thinking though, because Rogue is there, she's just not an
yeah,
X-Man at that
yeah,
point.
yeah.
She's not a part of the team.
There are plenty of mutants in the movie, but I'm saying like actual X-Men. We only get
No, you're right. I just didn't think about that until now. You're absolutely right. Although that did strike me at the time as like, it felt like the team was very small. It just didn't occur to me that it was that small.
yeah.
Did that bug you?
No, because again, I understand why. You know, it's at the time, like I said, they don't
Low budget, or not low budget, but
lo-
lower budget.
lower budget. Again, they're not really sure how far they want to go in terms of the outrageous and the comic booky. It's like they're sort of halfway doing it, where they're like, oh, there's all this cool stuff in the X-Men universe, but we also want to be kind of realistic, and so they're sort of playing in this middle area, and they're not sure how outlandish they should be able to go. Thankfully, with some of the newer films, we're finally getting to play around more with what we've got. But so you got all that going on, and you've also just got again introducing people to this entire premise of these mutants, and you don't want to throw too much at them. um,
Oh no, definitely, because the X-Men mythos is also incredibly complicated just by virtue of how many characters there are in it. I mean, God, you could murder somebody with Wolverine. I mean, you just him alone, you could just like, just his backstory and where he comes from, and why he is the way he is.
oh yeah.
And this movie does an excellent job with Wolverine.
Oh yeah.
I wish that the flashbacks to Weapon X that we get in this movie were the way all of them looked, because it's so creepy and
Yeah.
super like grungy and dark, and it looks fucked up.
We get some
There's
more
that
of that.
great,
We get some more of that in X2. But after
you
that,
know, it's good in
the
X2 as far as I remember, but
the aesthetic changes.
it does change. It becomes a lot more shiny, a lot more sci-fi. But I love in this just the grungy dirtiness
Mhm.
of the experiment and of the place where it happens. I love the gas masks and all the guys.
Yeah.
And by the good bit of setup, you can tell which one Stryker is too.
Yeah. Well,
You can definitely tell.
Wolverine is easily the best part of this movie. I didn't
Yes,
notice it until
definitely.
this viewing, but even though he doesn't get his classic outfit, and they even have that one line where Cyclops is like, "Would you prefer yellow spandex?" And I'm watching the movie and I'm like, "Yeah, kind of, a little bit."
I'm like that would be significantly less silly than this BDSM gear you guys are rocking.
But even though we couldn't get Wolverine's like legit costume in this movie, if you notice the jacket he wears around, it's got like these yellow stripes on
Yeah.
the arm, and it's very reminiscent because it's even got the three black stripes like inside of it. It's very reminiscent of classic Wolverine. That was a nice touch from the costume
Yeah, no,
department.
that
Also,
is definitely cool.
Hugh Jackman is amazing.
BabyFace Hugh Jackman.
I can see why like he's contractually obligated to be like in every fucking X-Men movie because he's great in this. I mean, when he was cast, there was a bit of concern because he's way too tall, technically.
Yeah, and
Comic book
Wolverine is supposed to be very stocky.
comic book Wolverine is short and scrappy, and they had this tall guy who was not known for doing anything remotely like this, but he blows it out of the water. I mean, he is
His
Wolverine.
performance is definitely different than the comics. Like, I mean, and I'm not a terribly avid Wolverine reader. And we should have said this before. Part of the point of doing this, doing all the X-Men movies on DFOS, is because Dylan is rather well acquainted with the X-Men mythos, and I'm rather a noob. I grew up a little bit on X-Men, but
Yeah.
as we talked about in the X-Men Apocalypse episode, it was never a franchise I was ever particularly taken with. And I thought that maybe doing this, I'd get a little bit more taken with it. And it was also an excuse to revisit these movies, which I haven't seen since I was a kid.
The whole
And
problem
this one, go ahead.
the whole problem that well, go ahead and say what you were about to say because I think what I was about to say would sort of segue us into a different route. Just finish your thought.
All right, well, all I was going to say was, because we're talking about introducing, people to the X-Men mythos with this movie, and that's what this was for me when I was a kid. Now, I can't remember if I'd seen any of the animated series prior to this. Probably, but I don't remember having seen it. And I also can't remember if I saw this movie before or after Spider-Man came out, because I know I didn't see it in theaters. I didn't see it until, I mentioned this to you before texting, that I had gone to Hollywood Video and rented it, and that's how I saw it for the first time. So I do remember seeing this movie for the first time. I just can't remember when.
I know I definitely saw Spider-Man before I saw this. Spider-Man is one of the earliest times that I can actually remember going to a movie when I was that young, you know? I'm sure I went.
I feel that.
I'm sure I was there plenty of times before that, but I was fucking. My brain was still developing at the time. But
still is. No,
I remember very well when I went to see Spider-Man. It was a while later that I actually got to see X-Men.
That, I believe, is the only time I've ever seen this movie in full, though. Or prior to tonight, obviously. Was renting it from Hollywood Video and watching it that first time, and I remember my thought was, wow, this is bleak. I remember watching it and just being like, it's a very dark movie. Palette wise, the themes are very dark, and I think that totally works for it.
Oh,
what I really like about this movie,
I think X-Men is at its best when it's bleak. Even when you have all the ridiculous silliness going on with the costumes and the crazy powers, the story itself should always be about like heavy shit, because X-Men is a comic book that handles heavy shit really well.
And it's not downtrodden. It's just bleak, and I really like that about it. It's very fun. Well, we'll get to that. It's fun, and it has its poppy moments, but it definitely keeps it
separate. What'd you say you were cutting out?
We both cut out at the same time. That's what happened there.
Oh.
I was just saying that it's fun, but it keeps it grounded.
Right.
And I think that's something. And what you were about to say, I agree with, is that it's good that it's separate for that reason.
Yes, a lot of fans really want the X-Men to get integrated back into the Marvel Cinematic Universe that we have now. I have to confess that I don't want that, and the reason is I think that those two universes work better separately, actually, because the X-Men universe works so well when it's sort of self-contained in its own little bubble. Even in the comics, whenever X-Men characters pop up with the other Marvel characters, and a lot of people are really going to disagree with me about this, but I always find it really jarring, because it just brings up all these weird questions like, why don't you ever hear about mutants in all these other comic books? What do these other superheroes think about mutants? Does the government lump these other superheroes in with the mutants? How does the politics of the mutants and the politics of the superheroes work alongside each other? It makes it way too overly complicated, and I really like that, at least in the movies, we have them as two totally separate universes, with some bleed through when we have Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver showing up in the Avengers movies, but that's fine because they gave them a different explanation for their powers and shit. I just think the whole story of mutants appearing among the human population and having their own superpowers works so much better as its own thing.
Yeah. Definitely, I completely agree with you. Now, I think what they're likely to do when because I think it's inevitable at this point that the X-Men are going to cross over with the MCU because of the success that Sony has had with Civil War, and also because that X-Men Apocalypse didn't do the numbers that they wanted it to. So I think that's what they're likely to do. Either that, or they're going to put Deadpool in every movie, because that's the only other option they have.
Deadpool, due to the fourth wall breaking nature of that character, he could easily show up in both franchises and still have them be separate, and I would be fine with it.
Well, what I think they're likely to do is that they'll keep the X-Men in their own universe and have it be an interdimensional crossover, unlike Spider-Man. Because I think it would be dumb of them to reintroduce the X-Men into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But I was saying you can have your cake and eat it too then.
That would be so
stupid. No, definitely.
Because then you would have to explain, there are mutants now that we never went into in all the other Marvel Cinematic Universe movies. Like, it would just be weird for them to come out of the blue and all of a sudden there's this whole new race of people that we never knew existed. At least
I don't want to see Wolverine's origin again, and we'd have to get that if they did it. The only thing that I would be like, the only reason I want to here's what I want to see. I want to see the X-Men franchise in like 10 years die. I want to see it die off. I want Marvel to get the rights back by proxy, and then I want them to do a solo Wolverine movie that has nothing to do with the X-Men. Don't even like say the word mutant in it. I mean, I guess you could do that, but I don't want the X-Men to be even remotely involved, because Wolverine wasn't an X-Men character until way later.
Right.
Well, not way later. It was like 5 or 6 years. But he was a solo character for a long time. Then he got his own miniseries, and then he got put into the X-Men.
That famous comic where he gets to fight the Hulk and shit.
Yeah, but that's where his first appearance is, Hulk 181. And I just think that it would be cool to see a movie set in the MCU with Wolverine in it that isn't about the X-Men. Right. Or doesn't have X-Men in it. So I'd be down for that, but otherwise...
He's been a member of the Avengers before. I mean, there's so much you can do with him.
He's currently an Avenger, I think, or he was the leader of the Avengers at one point.
Was he?
Yeah. Which I think was only because of his relationship with Captain America. Because otherwise, it's like, what rational person is going to be like, yeah, Wolverine can lead the Avengers?
Now you mentioned something about Hugh Jackman's Wolverine before, that he was too. What was the word you used? Um,
Well, I said he was babyface, but I was just saying that in
no,
an endearing way.
something after that. You said something about his character being.
Oh, well, the point I was trying to make was that he strikes me as a bit like. Does he strike you as like wittier than Wolverine is in the comics? And because I think that might just be like the leading man role that they've put him in here.
Yeah,
But you know what I mean?
I
Like,
feel like there's definitely an attempt to make him more likable than he ever was in the comics.
but I think that is sort. And you know what? I think it kind of works. But he
I think
comes
they've
off
gone
as
off.
less grizzled.
I think they've gone away from it a little bit
They definitely
in
have,
movies
yeah.
since then. But yeah, there's definitely an attempt in at least these first three X-Men movies to make him way more likable than he ever was in the comics. And it's still present when you watch like Days of Future Past, but it's not played up nearly as much. And a lot of it has to do with the relationship that he cultivates with Rogue in this movie, which is one of the
Yes,
best parts of the movie.
I
Um,
enjoyed it.
the other problem Logan always has in the Fox movies is that in order to do Wolverine right, it would have to be an R-rated movie.
Yeah,
And
and we're
then,
supposedly getting that now, so we'll see.
and at the time, they would have never done that. So,
No, 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 definitely not. Maybe if any character had a shot at it, it was Wolverine, and even then, no.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I would love a rated R X-Men movie where like Wolverine's cussing up a storm and like there's like the battles are like bloody and shit, but
We're getting one. It's gonna happen.
well, it's gonna be a solo Wolverine movie, isn't it?
It's gonna be the rumor. Well, not rumor. It's been all but confirmed that it's gonna be based on Old Man Logan, kind of.
Mm.
But also, Dylan, there is I actually haven't seen this movie at all, either version, but there is an unrated version of the Wolverine. So you do I don't know how much cussing there is in that, but you do have Wolverine cutting people's heads off and shit. So if you want
You
that,
haven't actually seen the Wolverine before?
no,
That'll be interesting.
I would.
That'll be
Oh,
interesting.
I can't wait to get to that one.
That one is
So
one that's very. Some people really like it, and some people don't like it at all. Um,
oh no, I'm very pumped for that. I've heard mixed things about it as well. So I didn't see it at the time because I heard mixed things about it. So I'm about that. But Dylan, let me ask you a question.
sure.
Do you like this movie? Because we
Yeah,
haven't really even gotten into that. Yeah, I do
it's
too.
the second
I
best
think
of the original X-Men trilogy.
certainly so, certainly so. I don't think it's great, but I think I think a lot of what held it back
It's very, and this
was
is weird to say about a movie that was only made 16 years ago, but it's very of the time.
oh god, yes.
It has the year.
This is such a 90s movie, Dylan.
It has
This
the
is such a
year.
90s
It
movie.
has the year 2000 written all over it.
But no, I disagree. I think specifically the 90s because you can tell that the
But when you look
script
at
that
shit that came out in the year 2000, it was still very much the 90s.
but yeah, but all that shit was shot in the 90s though is what I'm saying. So that's why I'm saying that is that it carries over, yeah.
That's true. It's true. It's true. The beginning of any decade is always pretty much exactly the same as the ending of the previous decade. Um,
Makes sense, especially when it comes to films that are shot during that last decade. That's why like calling a movie state of the art is so weird because when it comes out it's not state of the art.
it's gonna be outdone in like 5 minutes. Just wait. Just wait a second.
That's that's
Go.
why when you go to film school they tell you not to buy your camera equipment because it's going to be out of date in like a month anyway, so don't even bother. Just rent it. So, I I liked this. I had a lot of problems with it, mainly in terms of
Oh yeah, that's not a perfect movie.
no, not by any stretch of the imagination. I think it's a lot of what holds it back is its budget, the studio being unsure of the superhero genre after what happened with Batman and Robin and everything, and
Right. Right.
just this being an untested formula in terms of a Marvel movie and an untested franchise, of course. All the special effects, obviously, this is stuff that we had never seen before.
Right.
These are superpowers we'd never seen before. This is probably
Is
the
it a bit?
largest.
Is it a bit dated now? Yeah, sure, but I'm not.
Oh God, yes. That mutation machine effect is awful.
Yeah, And I think we're just too close to it to look past that at this point. Like I can watch
Oh yeah.
I watch a movie from 30 years ago and I'm like, oh, it's fine. It's what they had at the time. But for some reason, 16 years ago just isn't long enough ago to forgive. I don't know why that happens.
Yeah, well, it's because we were there and we like remember being better. I think,
mhm.
like you and I, and we look back at the original X-Men. We remember watching it as kids and just being blown away by the visual effects. Like there's one shot early on where Logan pops. It's like this. It's like his introduction shot. It's amazing.
Well, I can
He
name
pops the two.
I can
He pops
name
the two claws. Puts him up against that guy's throat, and then the third one comes out in the middle.
Yeah, I love that.
There's
I love that scene.
it's awesome. But there's an insert where there's like this close up on Logan's eye, and his hand is in the foreground, and the claw pops out. It looks like total shit
Uh-huh.
because it's superimposed. Oh my god, superimposed over. So
I mean,
it just looks like crap.
I can name 3 movies right now from the 90s that have better effects than this because I've always said that the CG in Jurassic Park and Terminator 2 still hold up today. And
Mhm.
recently, while rewatching Independence Day, I actually found that the effects in that held up pretty well because they mixed a lot of the bad CG that they had at the time with some practical shit. I mean, the CG flames in that movie look awful, but everything else looks pretty good. Um,
Yeah, the CG fire in this also no good.
yeah, CG fire in general is. I mean, it's gotten better, but it's like CG blood. I've never been completely sold on it.
Oh
Um,
no, definitely not. I don't remember a lot of CG blood in this, but there are a lot of like really bad CG shots. Like when Senator Kelly first mutates. Oh no. When Senator Kelly um turns into the water in his very last like breath,
yeah,
that looked like crap. When he
yeah,
just totally turned into water, that looked really
yeah.
bad.
Now, some of the better things that we have in this movie is like Mystique. Mystique's great.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
She looks good.
was the first time we had seen that, and I mean, now we're so used to Mystique because she's been in like all of them, but at the time, man,
You
um,
know that was revolutionary at the time, design wise. I mean, she didn't look like that in the comics. Obviously, she had a full costume in the
and I
comics.
love the weird like music that they have whenever Mystique is on camera. That like it's like violin.
Oh,
It's like
yeah, her
violins
theme
just
is
going like.
great.
It's like ooh, it's kind of
It's great. Yeah.
creepy. Like it sends a chill up your spine. It's amazing.
Oh yeah, no, she is awesome. Her first moment is great
The
as
first scene with
well.
her at the
Although,
helicopter with Robert Kelly.
do
Uh,
you wish that she didn't speak though? Because her line, like, it's great. I'm of two minds about it because her line is great,
uh,
but I don't know if she would say that in that moment. Like, she turns it back into Mystique, like having been this guy in a suit prior to that. She looks at Senator Kelly and just goes, "People like you are the reason I was scared to go to school as a child."
I thought it made sense because a few minutes before that, or a few seconds before that, Robert Kelly had a line where he was like, "That's why they need people like me." And then she transforms and she says that line and she knocks him the fuck out. So I thought it made sense.
Okay. No, I do think it may, yeah, no doubt. I think I'm maybe nitpicking, but in the moment when I was watching it, I was kind of like, would she even say anything? Would this be better if she was quiet? But no, I think you're right. I think it works.
Because
The
she doesn't have a lot of lines in this movie, so I thought giving her a really good line right off the bat was a good
I
thing.
think that's what got me about it though and that's why it kind of bugged me is that of all the moments to have her speak, that struck me as the most forced and the most awkward because
Hmm.
I don't think somebody would in that instance. I think they just do the dirty deed and be on with it. But in that instance, she has such a personal link to that dirty deed,
Mhm.
that I think it makes sense that
Yeah.
she would say something like that.
Oh, now
Uh,
naturally, we haven't even talked about Ian McKellen and Patrick Stewart. Amazing
I
in this movie.
I think that Ian McKellen and Hugh Jackman are the two best things about this
Oh
movie
yeah, because
because
Patrick Stewart's Patrick Stewart. You put him in anything and he's great.
and Professor X gets nothing to do in this movie anyway,
No,
so it doesn't really matter. His
although
best
he does
scene
have the one scene where he takes over Sabretooth and has him strangle Magneto.
that was pretty cool. I like that scene. And I like Professor X's refusal to kill
Mm,
because the X-Men as characters, I don't think are they're not completely opposed to killing. It seems
no,
they seem to like because Wolverine kills in this movie,
they're
and I
very
know he kills in X2.
utilitarian. They do what they got to do. I mean,
Yeah, no, I
they
think so too.
they would prefer to minimize collateral damage certainly, but if they got to kill a guy, they're gonna kill a guy. I mean,
Except Magneto.
except Magneto.
Yeah, he's a special case. But I bought it in that scene that Professor X wouldn't just cut his throat. Um, that also another instance of good special effects. That bullet twirling in front of that guy's head looked pretty good.
Yeah.
For the time.
That whole scene is just one of the most badass moments in this whole thing, where Magneto
It's a nail biter. It's really good. Yeah.
Magneto picks up all the guys' guns and turns them around on them. Oh, it's amazing. If I could pick any mutant to have the powers of from X-Men, totally going with Magneto.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. I feel that. I definitely feel that.
I mean, I'm of two minds on it, because that healing factor that Logan has is pretty fucking sweet. But I mean, just the things you can do with Magneto's powers, it's like, I love it. It's like the Force, but more specific.
It is more specific, and you can fly with it. You can't really fly with the Force, it doesn't seem.
That's true. It's better than the Force. Well, there's a thing that they can do sometimes.
Darth Vader levitates in Episode 5.
Yeah, and Count Dooku did a similar thing in the Clone Wars cartoon, where he just sort of fell with style.
Which is basically what Vader did because in that moment in Episode 5, he's looking down at Luke after Luke tumbles down some stairs. He looks down and then he does this like wum 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 wum, like weird levitating thing. But it's more like falling with style, like you just said.
Like controlled jumps and like
yeah,
cool like gliding things. But Magneto can just straight up fly.
And I mean, Luke does a force jump in that scene too, so I guess force jump is also kind of the same thing. But anyway,
legit flight.
Yeah, no, nothing like that. And Magneto can kind of do that in this, which makes sense, because, I mean, he's got iron in his blood, so presumably he can move the iron in his own blood, right?
Right, yes. That whole iron in his blood thing, too, comes in. It's so cool what they do with that in X2. We're not talking...
Oh, God, yes!
But we're not talking about X2. My favorite part about the ending of this movie is that they put him in the plastic prison, and just the whole time watching this movie, I was like, oh, God, I want to put in X2 now, because him escaping from that thing is the coolest... anyway.
Yeah, no, I really wanted to put in X2 after this as well. And I think that's a lot of what I think holds this movie back, and a lot of people have talked about this in their reviews that I've seen and stuff, that this movie is really just set up for a franchise. It's not really much more than that. And as that, I think it works, but it's just not much more than that. A lot of the themes are good. There's some good noodling there of ideas of fear and acceptance and what you have to do to be accepted, and that's all good.
In many instances, the influence from the Richard Donner Superman movies is clear, because in many instances there is straight up set up for X2, like where we learn about Alkali Lake and just all the Logan flashbacks. It's not as blatant as the Superman movies, where we literally open with Zod getting sent off into space and then not seeing him again for the rest of the 2 hours. But it's definitely there. There is definitely some major setup going on. You can tell Bryan Singer was biting his nails that this would be a success, so that he could get to make the next one.
And to your point about this being similar to the first Superman, I feel like the opening very much so mirrors the original Superman, in that it opens with a voiceover, just like Superman does. In Superman, though, the voiceover is about the fictional archetype of the Daily Planet and of Superman, not of like explaining Superman. Like this is explaining the mutants. But what I think is more comparable is the destruction of Krypton to Magneto's origin that we get in this. And I love that we get Magneto's origin in this. We were going on before about how this is a great introduction to the X-Men universe, and about how it does a very good job of holding your hand and introducing you to the universe.
One of my favorite things that they did in First Class is they actually revisited this origin scene, and they did some more with it.
I can't wait to get there.
We also get a bit of that in Apocalypse, because I told you about how he destroys Auschwitz. But
right.
Yeah, Magneto's origin. Magneto is one of the best comic book villains that Marvel has ever cooked up, because
he's a bit like foppish in this.
Well, it's Ian McKellen.
I know. Well, yeah. Okay, true. Okay, you're right. And he's a little foppish in the comics too, but I think it's that his foppishness gets in the way of his plan at some points. Like, or not in the way of his plan, but in the way of, like, just him being a serious villain. Like, there are some things that I loved. I love when we first see him in his cave office. Like, I love that he's got an office in a cave. Yeah. Because they're definitely not villains, right?
Well, I think the idea is that he's fortified that place with the same technology that he uses in his helmet, because that's why Professor X couldn't find it with Cerebro.
It also is supposed to look similar to Cerebro, because we learn in this that Magneto helped him build it, and I think that it's supposed to be like a visual parallel to that. But there's a great moment where he sits down in a chair or at his desk, and you see like in offices, like you see those balls going back and forth
Yeah, but
constantly,
there's no
keeping each other
strings.
moving.
He's doing it.
There's no strings.
He's
He's
doing it
doing it
like
himself.
completely with his mind. I love it, and yet he still
And
has the amount of control that he can do that, and at the same time, like, give Sabretooth a chair and carry on a conversation. Like young
right,
Magneto that we see in First Class when he was still learning how to use his powers, he would have had to sit there and like focus on those balls to get him to do that. But here,
right,
this Magneto is like in total control of his powers, and I love it.
right. And I liked that moment because it was subtle. Like you wouldn't even notice that if you weren't paying attention. But there are other moments though where I think that Magneto's like really over the top personality kind of like it hinders like his not his ability to take him seriously, but just staying focused on his plan, I mean.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot towards the end where they're all tossing around one-liners, and I feel like we're watching because Dylan, would you agree that towards the end it sort of just kind of becomes a stereotypical superhero movie?
Oh yeah,
And
by necessity of, oh, here's the big fight scene, make it fun.
right, but it's not that impressive as a big fight scene though, and
Now it's not.
I don't think it was at the time though either. Like I don't remember being particularly taken by it as a kid.
Again, small. It's a very small movie.
It is a very
I have a
small movie.
feeling that
There's that
I have a feeling
yeah.
that because they were so unsure of it, that Bryan Singer. I don't know what the budget was on this movie or what it was like for the time, but I'm pretty sure that they were forced to be very small scale. Um,
Don't do a fight scene on top of the Statue of Liberty then, because like it was very clear when they were doing location shooting and when they weren't.
mm,
And there wasn't a lot of location shooting. A lot of it was sets. But anytime they got close up to the Statue of Liberty, I was just like, that's a soundstage. That's a soundstage. And like, it's fine, whatever. It doesn't matter. You can look past it, suspension of disbelief, all that. But like, my suspension of disbelief didn't have enough to go on.
mm.
Like, there wasn't enough driving me there at that point to go, well, I'm interested in this, this, and this. It was just all kind of like, well, there are two Wolverines now. Although that was actually really cool.
Oh yeah, another
And
Mystique moment. Anytime Mystique is in this movie, you're glued to it, man.
I know. Well, she's naked, so you know. But I also loved. That's not it though. I also loved in that scene how when Logan swipes her claws with his claws, like his real adamantium claws and her bullshit fake ones, they get chopped off immediately because they're literally just her. Like
Right.
they're not actual adamantium.
Shriek.
Like,
She's like, ah!
yeah, no, that's some of her. Imagine if that was her only line. Like, imagine how much power that. Anyway, that would have. I think that would have been more
'Cause her
powerful. If
voice
that was
has that
what
like
she said.
modulation in this movie that goes away in the other movies. But her voice is modulated in this movie,
Because she's not Jennifer Lawrence.
and that shriek is like, ah! And it's like, ooh.
No, I'm totally with you. I think it's
Also,
great.
as much as I see, you're talking about how you weren't like invested in like the fight at the end. I think what makes it work is just the characters in the movie are really what carry you through it. With the exception of, man, Halle Berry is not good as Storm in this first movie. She's trying to put on this really bad African accent
Oh yeah, the accent's no good,
for
and
parts
it's
of it,
inconsistent from scene to scene.
and just also her level of power is inconsistent. Because in one scene she'll be like super powerful, like when she took down Toad, and then the rest of the time she'll be like, because Storm in the comic books is always just like a fucking badass force of nature. She doesn't have as many of these control issues that we see with other X-Men, but I mean, I guess it was another example of something they had to scale back for their budget or whatever. But I don't know. I think she's the weakest one,
That'll bring.
which is saying something because Cyclops is often heralded as like the weakest one in these movies
I was
because he's
about to
not that
say.
interesting. He's not that interesting, and I'll say that he's not very interesting. But at least he's
There's
in
not a
this
lot to him,
movie.
no.
At least in this movie, he's got that like that back and forth with Logan. So at least
But they
that's
have that in every movie, though.
so at least that's something. And I
At
didn't
least
get
it's consistent.
and I didn't get any of that something from Halle Berry in this movie. And I think she's a lot better in future installments, honestly.
We'll see, I guess. We'll
X,
see when we get to them.
X3's a mess, but Halle Berry's actually pretty good as Storm in that one. It's a shame.
Yeah, well, I mean, she fought to get a bigger role in that, so I guess good. Dylan, there's that line though, that now infamous, line where that she goes, "What happens to a toe when it gets struck by lightning?" The same thing that happens to everything else, and it's like,
That's her badass moment.
and I'm like, well, yeah, And by the way,
Like,
the same thing does not happen to everything that gets struck by
that is
lightning.
not how you write a badass line for Storm. I'm sorry. Watch the '90s cartoon. When Storm gets going, she goes on like some fucking Smaug rant.
She's terrifying.
Some fucking.
Power of lightning, strike again! And it's like, holy shit,
She
dude.
literally sounds like Smaug. She's like, I am fire, I am death, I am a goddess, blah blah blah. And I'm like, calm down, Storm.
Do you know if she has to talk to the weather when she controls it as an X-Men fan?
I don't think she does. I just think she's slightly off kilter, honestly.
So she's like Johnny Storm, where it's like he says "flame on." Oh no, he has to though. Like for some reason discovers that he has to say "flame on" to use his powers.
I think some mutants, when they're using their powers, they get like a little caught up in it, and there's like kind of a rush that goes on. We saw that with Jean Grey when she uses the Phoenix powers. I think there's definitely some of that going on with Storm because she's like one of the most.
Definitely with Wolverine too.
She's one of the most level-headed members of the group, but man, when she gets going, uh,
But with Wolverine too, you definitely. I mean, he's like the biggest example of it, where he'll just lose it and just turn into full feral monster mode.
oh yeah, well
And you see him.
powers is like a rage ability, like.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I like the subtle way that's worked in here, in terms of like, there's that scene where Rogue wakes him up from the nightmare and he accidentally stabs her.
Yeah.
Great, fantastic scene. And it's
that.
also like, one thing I wanted to mention before, and we just started talking about other things, is that you can tell that this movie is based on like 15 different scripts for unproduced X-Men movies, which it is. There's a whole backlog of history of the X-Men trying to be made into a film.
I think they wove it together pretty well, though. It's not like an Amazing Spider-Man 2 problem where.
No, definitely not. But but because they have a decent overarching narrative here, and that's the thing about the basic plot. It's decent, but it's not very complex. But hang on, before we talk about that though,
I love the.
I don't want to lose this point.
Okay,
and fuck, I already did lose it. But no. So you subtly show that Wolverine is sort of struggling to hold back his savagery and hold back his feralness and his isolation, his introvertedness while he's with the X-Men.
Mm-hmm.
And that scene was a good subtle way to show it, rather than him at just one point going, I wish I could stop being a monster. I wish I could be a normal person. It's very subtly worked in there, and I appreciate that.
Right.
But anyway, what were you gonna say?
I love the whole red herring that they have going on with this movie, where the entire runtime you think that Magneto is after Wolverine, and there's just that great moment in the train where he's like, "What the hell do you want from me?" And Magneto's just like, "My dear boy, whoever said that I wanted you?" And then Wolverine just like looks over at Rogue. That's a great moment. The only thing is they kind of ruined the reveal, because there's one moment earlier on in the mansion where they're like, where Jean Grey's like, "What do they want with this? What do you think they want with him?" And Professor X is like, "I'm not entirely sure they are after him." I was like, you just gave away the twist.
Yeah, no, definitely, because I knew that going in. Like, that was never a twist to me. I mean, I've seen this movie before, you've seen this movie before, so obviously that's not a twist to us. So it didn't, like, that problem didn't even occur to me, because I just assumed, like, well, if I hadn't seen this movie, that would be a twist to me. But yeah, no, you're right. They totally kill that reveal. It's also blatantly obvious, because, like, just think about what they're doing. Like, what Magneto wants to do. The problem with the machine is that it hurts him when he uses it, but he needs his powers to do it.
Right.
So who in the story that we have here can we possibly get to solve this problem? But if the audience had figured it out on its own like that, that's fine.
Now some questions are raised about like, how did Magneto find out about Rogue? Things like that. But those are just logical questions that you just sort of have to ignore for the sake of the movie.
Well, Dylan, speaking of, can we get into some negatives then? Because we're approaching very slowly 2 hours, so I just like to kind of to get into some things I want to say.
I did want to ask you what you thought about Sabretooth in this movie.
He's just a dumb henchman, and I mean,
no, I love the Liev Schreiber version of
yeah, he's great
that we got in X-Men Origins Wolverine. It's like the best part of that movie.
I'm glad they retconned this version. Yeah.
But going back and watching this version, well, and you can say that they're the same guy still, because I mean, all Sabretooth, like Wolverine.
Yeah, but he doesn't even acknowledge Wolverine's existence.
Sabretooth, like Wolverine, did lose his memory at one point and like had to figure out who.
In the movies?
They've never said that.
Oh, okay.
Assume that it happened over the course of time.
Fair enough. No, that's fair.
We've only had 2 Sabretooth appearances in the entirety of the franchise, film-wise.
That's true.
So all you have to say is that he lost his memories and he grew his hair out. And drank some
I
protein
believe it.
shakes. But
Yeah, no, he looks totally different.
well, he
His
has a couple.
power set seems to work
He
differently.
has a couple really cool parts in the movie. Like I love when that thing he has with Storm where he's like, "Scream for me," and then later on there in the Statue of Liberty, he's like, "You owe me a scream."
Yeah, that was great.
That was great,
That
but
was good.
so much of the movie is just him bumbling. Like they turn him into a bumbling henchman is the bad part. Like he's always fucking up. Like the part where he's supposed to grab Robert Kelly and he drops him into the ocean. But I love the moment right after that where Magneto bends the bars where he can't get out. Um,
Oh yeah, no, that was great. That whole scene was awesome. I also just loved that. I kind of liked that Magneto fucked up.
yeah,
Like villains don't often do that blatantly and for like really understandable reasons in superhero movies. Like it sometimes feels very forced when a supervillain fucks up in a superhero story because like it feels like suddenly the writer has to make them seem less intelligent to make the hero seem more intelligent.
right.
Like sometimes you get that in like Superman stories with Lex Luthor where
In this
Lex
movie,
has this elaborate plan and Superman wins because like Lex's ego got in the way and whatever. But it's like, nah, he probably would have accounted for that. But in this movie, it's very much so makes sense in the way that Magneto fucks up. The mutation machine does something to Senator Kelly, but Magneto doesn't know what it is. He doesn't know it's going to kill him. I like that a lot.
it succeeds in mutating the guy. He just doesn't know that it's going to cause his entire genetic structure to break down.
Right.
Because Magneto obviously is a technical genius in this movie because he helped build Cerebro and designed his helmet that keeps the professor out of his thoughts, although that got retconned later on in First Class. And he is able to build this machine seemingly because none of the other characters there seem intelligent enough to have come up with that. So clearly, this version of Magneto is a technical.
I don't think Toad. Although we do see Toad working on some equipment, he's fixing some stuff.
It looked like he was just painting something though.
Oh, okay. That was that. I hated that shot so much because they should have fucking cut it because it was this dumb, like weird joke where they were like, "Oh, look at Toad. He's got big goggles,
Yeah.
like a toad."
I do kind of like the moment where he looks at Sabretooth and he's like, "We're just supposed to bring somebody back with you," and Sabretooth's like, "Rrr."
I like that moment, but I just don't like the visual gag of the big eyes and the goggles. Like that's not funny. Like that's just dumb.
So you already kind of mentioned something else that I wanted to ask you, and that was how do you feel about Magneto's plot in the movie? So you like his villain scheme?
Yeah, it's fine. It's well put together. It makes sense. It's a good idea. It works well within the themes of X-Men. It's just very simple, and you know, I think that works. It's very similar to like the first X-Men comic, in that Magneto just kind of shows up somewhere and the X-Men have to stop him. Good idea for the first outing. I think that it sort of stretches for an hour and 45-minute movie. Like there's like 20 minutes after they beat him, you know?
Yeah.
Like there's a lot there's a lot of wrapping up in this movie and it works. Like it feels like it's necessary. But except for that dumb fucking scene where you see Senator Kelly on TV even though he's dead and it's Mystique, and on TV you can see her yellow eyes and it's like, who doesn't notice that watching the fucking TV? Like his eyes are blatantly yellow. Like even somebody who wasn't an X-Man should be able to know that that's clearly not Senator
But
Kelly.
how
And like
much attention does the average person pay to the news?
I know, but it was also really funny because you could tell that they were superimposed over.
Yeah.
And like it looked really
Looked like
obvious, like that
Thriller.
it was. It did look like that's exactly what I was thinking. It looked just like Thriller. Oh, thank you for saying that because I thought that at the time, and I don't think I would have said that had you not brought it up.
I love the moment though earlier on because there's a point in this movie that Wolverine stabs Mystique, and if you're not familiar with the other movies, you think, oh, did they kill her? And then there's just that moment where the guy's like, hey, this guy's still alive. Let's get him out of here. And you zoom down to like this, it looks like a security guard lying on the ground. And he's got the same wounds in his abdomen that Mystique had.
Oh, okay. See, I didn't put two and two together because when I saw that, I thought the idea of that was supposed to be that, oh, they're gonna frame Wolverine for murdering that guy when really it was Mystique.
Yeah, no.
But it was Mystique, so that makes a lot more sense.
They took her out on a gurney or whatever, and then she went to a hospital, presumably, and at some point turned herself into Robert Kelly. It is kind of a bummer that they killed Robert Kelly in the first movie. He's kind of a big...
He's a huge deal in the comics. I can't believe they didn't keep him.
He was the original person that was supposed to be assassinated in Days of Future Past.
Right.
But they couldn't have done that
Not.
in the movies anyway because you couldn't have him being a senator in the 70s and then also a senator in the year 2000. It would have been weird.
It could have been his dad.
Maybe, but I don't know. Stretch.
That would have been like super convenient. Like, oh, here's the same. I hate when they do that, like in a prequel where it's like, here's this guy's father, and he's exactly the same character. You know, it's like I always hate that in Superman
Then you'd have a
movies where
moment where
Jor-El.
his son would be around and he'd be like, "Go away, Robert Kelly Jr. Daddy's got
like,
Daddy's got sentinels to build."
like I'm okay with Howard Stark because Howard Stark makes sense,
Mm. And
but
he's a
like,
different character, really.
yeah, he's a little different. But like, there are some Superman stories where Jor-El is literally just Superman but without the powers, and I'm like, don't need that. They never met, so.
TAS Superman, he's identical.
Well, they look the same. Yeah, I mean that's okay though. I'm okay with that. But like, I mean a Drell who it's like I don't know what I even mean, but just like
You're talking about
I
characterization wise, it's like the same guy. They just say, "Oh, it's his dad." Oh,
and there's yeah, but that's the only excuse. Like, oh, it's his dad, and that's why he's got to be the same. It's laziness more than anything else that
that
bothers me.
that's not Burt Gummer. That's his great 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 granddaddy.
But you know what, though? That was a good example of that, though, because he was the complete opposite of the future Burt Gummer. He was like a dainty, like, dentist dude, and then he became like a gun-toting psychopath at the very end.
They did a similar thing with Marty McFly's ancestor in Back to the Future 3, where it's just Marty with a mustache, but he's also like characterized completely differently. So they're two totally different people.
Yeah. And it's like every example you bring up, I'm like, nah, I'm okay with that, though, because it's this. I'm trying to think of an example where it really bothered me. Of an example where it's like, oh, it's the parent, so he's the same, or she's the same.
You ever seen Men in Black 3?
Yes. Yup. Good example. Will Smith's dad.
Yeah,
Same character.
pretty much.
Yeah, pretty much. Also, that was super convenient, right? That fucking Tommy Lee Jones met Will Smith's dad when he was a kid, and then he became an agent all those years later, even though, like, he had nothing to do with him becoming an agent.
Yeah, it's supposed to be a setup like, oh, Agent K had his eye on Agent J all along, and I'm like, fuck you, Men in Black 3. Fuck you.
Yeah.
Damn it.
Oh, you know that.
Damn it, you had me hooked with your good villain, and then you're gonna pull this shit on me.
You know that movie is not bad until that point, and then it just completely comes off the rails.
Yeah.
Because Josh Brolin is a great young Agent K.
Oh, he does a great Tommy Lee Jones impression. I loved it.
He's great. No, he's awesome. It's just that he happened to be in a fairly crap movie. It's somewhat crap. It's not too bad. Do you think 3 is better than 2?
Hard to say.
Yeah, no, they're.
Because I got that mad nostalgia for 2.
Yeah, me too. That worm in 2. That worm in 2, though. That worm in 2 is great.
That worm dough.
Yeah.
That villain dough.
The villain in 3 is better.
No, I'm
certainly.
saying
Oh, the villain in 2.
Villain in 2, yeah.
She's certainly more fine.
Ah, yeah.
But
Would you rather look at her or Boris the animal?
all right, that's one thing about 3 I always hated was like they constantly feel the need to say his entire name every time they bring him up. Boris the animal.
Reminds me of there's a character in the Boondocks called a pimp named Slickback. And there's a running gag where somebody will just be like, "Hey, Slickback," and he's like, "Nah, nigga, it's a pimp named Slickback." Like he insists on being called a pimp named Slickback.
Well, Dylan, here's one other thing I wanted to say though about X-Men. And because we've been fairly like, sort of, I think we've been very fair to X-Men so far, but I think I leaned more towards the negative than you did rewatching this. So I kind of want to bring up the points I wanted to
definitely
bring
have
up.
more of a connection to the movie than you do, so that's definitely part of it, and that's why
I've only seen it the one time. Yeah, that's why we did this.
That's why we decided to do this on DFOS.
Yeah, no, this has been really fun so far. I've been having a great time, but I think that the dialogue in this movie is all over the place. Like, there are some lines that are great, and there are some exchanges that are, like, nonsense. And it's only because it feels like they'll introduce a thematic idea, like, randomly, talk about it for, like, a second, and then people will just walk away angry. And I'm just like, why?
Right.
Why, though? Why, though?
The best dialogue moments are, like, the exchanges between Magneto and Professor X. Like,
yeah, no, Jeff, I completely agree.
That's why Magneto is one of my favorite Marvel villains, because he always has these not theological. He just has these debates with people, and he's never wrong. Neither,
No.
neither side is really wrong in this movie, which is really
There's villains on all sides. Even the X-Men are a bit like, ugh, at some points. Like
yeah.
there's that scene where Storm is like, or where Senator Kelly asks Storm, "Are you afraid of normal people?" And she goes, "Sometimes."
Yeah. Or he
And
says,
I'm like,
no, he
"Ooh,
says,
that makes
"Do you
sense."
hate normal people?" And she says,
Oh,
"Sometimes." And he says,
oh, right.
he says, "Why?" She goes, "I suppose I'm afraid of them."
Right.
I do like that scene despite the questionable effects because I think it's great that Robert Kelly,
No, I think it's an awesome
in
scene.
his dying
Yeah.
moments, reaches out for comfort from a mutant, and
Oh no, I love that
and
bit
you
where he's like, "I don't want to be alone," and I'm like, "Oh yeah, no,
and you feel and
that's sad."
I feel like at the last he finally had like a realization like these guys aren't as bad as I thought of them of being.
Well, I think they both learn the same lesson, the X-Men and Senator Kelly in that instance, and it's the one that Magneto simply can't accept, and that is that there is good and bad in everybody, and that you can't measure it by whether or not somebody has superpowers.
One of
You
my
know?
favorite moments in the whole movie, dialogue wise, also, is when Magneto is like, he's just like pwned the X-Men. They're all trapped inside the Statue of Liberty. He single-handedly incapacitated all of them because that's just he's a badass. And he's going on one of his rants, one of his patent pending Magneto rants about like, don't you understand what I'm doing? Blah 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 blah. And there's just this line where Wolverine gets that verbal jab in on him. He goes, "You're full of shit. Because if you were really so righteous, you'd be up there, the one up there in the machine." And
Yep.
Magneto, like, I love it because he could have
He's like, "You have a point."
responded to that. Like he could have had a line about like, well, somebody has to be here to help reorganize the world, blah blah blah. But instead, he's just like, and he just flies.
Well, I also really love that moment. I don't know if it's before or after that. I don't remember where he goes up to Rogue and goes, "I'm so sorry, my dear." And I'm like, "Oh, all right, so he's still a person."
Yeah. Magneto's super. Oh, I love that character.
He's an amazing character, and I love Magneto too because of his moral ambiguity and because he so well fits the role of both hero and villain. Like he's a great villain in the original trilogy, and he's a great anti-hero in the new trilogy.
Right. Same thing with Mystique. They've done the same thing to all their
Yep.
villains. They've turned them all into anti-heroes.
Yep.
Um,
Because their lack of characters that they haven't already used.
well, that's bullshit though. It's X-Men. There's tons of characters. You're just afraid to use anybody too obscure.
Well, but that's the thing though, is like you're gonna sell the movie on fucking Havoc though. Like you can't sell X-Men First Class on Havoc because
That whole team is made up of people that you don't really know that well. I mean,
exactly. But they had to
Banshee.
sell that movie on
Banshee is in
Professor
a
X and
movie.
Magneto.
Banshee.
I know who Banshee is though, so you know at least I knew. At least I knew that.
But you're a nerd.
True. I am wearing a Batman shirt right
You're
now,
not
so
the
you know.
person that they're afraid of being too obscure for. It's Joe Blow off the street who's seen the X-Men movies and likes them, but doesn't has never picked up a comic book or any other form of printed media in his life.
Right.
And he goes into this movie like, "We fucking Banshee. Where's my Wolverine?" Uh,
Is Shaw a prior X-Men villain, or did they make him up for First Class?
no, the Hellfire Club is a thing.
But him in particular, I mean.
And he's the leader of the Hellfire Club.
He is okay. See, I know what the Hellfire Club is though. I didn't know that he was like
If you
he was a guy already.
if you've seen the Dark Phoenix saga in the cartoon, you've seen Shaw before because he's the head guy of the Hellfire Club. You just probably didn't
Gotcha.
know that that was his name.
I also don't remember that at all because I only watched that when I was a child. I remember renting that on VHS, and I distinctly remember the moment where they're on a ship, and Jean Grey is being tried for her crimes against the Shi'ar.
Right.
And there's this moment where she has her old school X-Men costume on. She walks onto the bridge and goes, "I decided to put my Marvel Girl costume on."
There's a
Because
moment.
that was always
There's a moment before she becomes like actual like Dark Phoenix, where she's been like brainwashed by the Hellfire Club, and she's actually in the Hellfire Club for a short period of time. Um,
Jean Grey is also one of those interesting X-Men in that she had a name back in the old days, and now she's
Marvel
just
Girl.
Jean Grey.
Yeah.
And it's like you watch the intro to the X-Men cartoon, everybody's got cool names: Storm,
Cyclops. Wolverine.
Wolverine, Jean Grey.
Even fucking Jubilee's got a name. It's like, yeah.
Professor X is called Professor X.
Yeah, which is just an abbreviation of his name. I mean,
No, true. Fair enough.
but
But still.
yeah.
But back to what I was saying. Awkward dialogue. Best example of it. Whenever Professor X, Cyclops, Wolverine, and Jean Grey are in a room together, like the dialogue gets super awkward and like super forced, like really quick. Like it just feels like people are bringing things up for no reason. And I'm trying to think of like a specific example,
It
but
does
I'm having
certainly
some
get
difficulty.
exposition-y in those moments.
That's my
Um,
problem with Professor X in this
which
movie
the
and why I.
which when Professor X first meets Wolverine, makes perfect sense that he's giving all
That's
this
fine, yeah.
explanation. I mean, he even asked for it. He's like, "What is this place?" And then we have a montage where we
Yeah.
learn all about the place. I do love the shot also where Jean Grey is like using her powers to fling the plates at Scott, and he's just like shooting them all. It's a great moment. Um,
Didn't. Cyclops' lasers didn't look that good.
no,
There was one really bad one where he shot Sabretooth on top of the Statue of Liberty, and I was like, oh god, that looks like shit.
that's another example of where this movie has aged quite a bit.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah. And also, see, here's another thing, too. When Wolverine gets his costume, and I couldn't think of any specific dialogue examples, so I'll pretty much move away from that point. It just gets awkward at points.
mm,
And I think that's just by virtue of they don't know what they're doing with this franchise yet.
right.
But what I was gonna say was when Wolverine gets his full costume, the black one, and he starts popping claws, it's so obvious that it's a different kind of effect from when he was doing it earlier. Because earlier it had to be CG. But now, nope, he's got gloves on so they can be practical.
Right.
And it looks very noticeable, the distinction. But hey,
Now, do you think
we were kids,
do you,
we didn't notice, you know.
which one do you think looks better, the practical effect or the CG claws?
I mean, the practical ones look like they're there, but the CG ones look cooler, if that makes any sense.
I see.
Because the practical ones, you can tell that they're just things popping out of the gloves. But when he's actually got them coming out of his body, they always like have this mystique to them. You know, like they have see what I mean? So they always have this like weird sheen. They always have this like cool ambiance to them, and I think that's because. And here's the other thing too. I'll say this first, and I'll say it again. They're focused on when they're the CG claws. They're like the focal point of the shot whenever they come out. Whenever he pops them out of his gloves, like they're just kind of like, whatever, we don't care now. But here's the thing: back in these days, when you did a CG shot, that shit had to be fucking planned out. That shit had to be fucking like the center. That had to be a set piece back in the day. Nowadays, no. You can throw CGI and have it look amazing wherever you want. But back then, every instance of CGI had to be a set piece.
Somebody
And
can
it's
be like,
very
"Hey,
obvious.
we're missing a shot. We were supposed to do the thing. We'll CG it later. We got $10 left in the budget."
Right, exactly. But in this, it's like everything is a set piece. And that's what I was going to say to you before. I love in this, all of the superpower set pieces are great. Every time they're showing off somebody's superpowers, it's awesome. That scene where Magneto is lifting up all the cars and he drops them down,
Yeah.
great. Except that all the cops are dumbasses because they don't run. What the fuck is
It's
wrong
just
with
like,
them? Oh, they know what a mutant is. They shouldn't be surprised. Fucking run. But anyway, so that's all great. But damn it, I lost my point again. I'm sorry.
You were talking about superpower set pieces.
But okay, see, they have to set those all up and make them a big deal, and there's no like real subtle use of powers in this. Maybe one or two, but there's that moment where nah, even that's technically like a set piece. You know what I mean though? Like where every time somebody uses a power, it's always like everybody's quiet. They're using their superpower.
It's got to be a big moment. You don't get to see a lot of like just casually using superpowers.
No, you get that in the sequence.
With the exception of like Magneto in his lair, where he's casually just like moving shit around with his magnetism, like that's pretty.
Yes.
They played that pretty casual, and I really liked that element.
No, I like that as well. But yeah, no, I definitely think that works. I'm just trying to think of the criticism I was bringing up in relation to that. I can't remember. But if you don't mind me bringing up this one last criticism I have, and then pretty much I've said everything I need to say. Oh my god, it is such a coincidence. Rogue meeting Wolverine. My god, like
Yeah.
So Rogue happens to wander into Alberta, Canada, where good old Wolverine happens to be at this super dive trucker bar in a cage fight. By the way, did that look like the kind of bar to you that's having cage fights? They've got a flat screen TV in there, Dylan. Are they really having cage fights?
I mean, it's Canada. I don't know.
But it's also like too, like that's such against the Canadian stereotype is that they've got places with like fucking
Yeah,
cage.
like that's the funny thing about like like the X-Men universe and like Wolverine's whole backstory is we get like rough and tumble Canadians, and in real life they're like, "Ooh, so sorry, so sorry," and like,
I didn't mean to bump you into that cage there, you hoser.
like a Canadian doesn't come up to you after a fight and be like, "You owe me some money."
Yeah, no, certainly not. And then another Canadian wouldn't put claws up to his throat, and protract another one
It would be more
just to
like
threaten his life.
"Excuse me, please. I think you might owe me some money. You know,
And
maybe."
he'd be like, "Oh, I wasn't aware of that. How much do I owe you, eh?"
Wolverine will be like, "No, I don't think I actually do owe you money. Actually, oh, I'm sorry. I thought you did.
My mistake.
Let me
But you would never lie to me, so I'll take your word for it. You're a man of honor, presumably.
let me just leave now and catch the hockey game." Uh, I don't know if we have Canadian listeners, but wow.
Oh, we do. I know
Uh,
for a fact.
oh, good, good. I insulted Jews.
Oh, are they? But Dylan, they're Canadians. They can't be insulted. They
That's
take
true.
everything. They take everything in stride. They're all just like, oh, they're just a couple of lovable Americans having some fun.
It's true. It's true. The Anti-Defamation League might come after me, but not the Canadians. That's
No, definitely not the Canadians. But yeah, no, that meeting of Rogue and Wolverine is super coincidental. My God, what were they thinking?
yeah.
Like, also too, they sort
But
of
at least
have
they
Rogue.
set it up a little bit in that they even before Rogue discovers her power, she has that line about how she wants to go traveling in Canada and like all that
Oh, I
shit.
missed that. I missed that. Okay,
There's
I know that she wanted to travel the world, but I didn't hear Canada.
specifically they're like looking at a map, her and her boyfriend, and she's like showing him this like hike that she has planned.
Right.
It's very into the wild. Uh,
Oh, it's a hike. It's a hike. A hike.
oh, it's
It's a walk. It's a walk hike.
well, she's talking about, oh, I'm gonna go up in these mountains and blah blah blah.
I thought that was like a traveling around the world kind of thing. My bad. I didn't know that was exclusively Canada, so that makes a lot more sense now. Never mind. That's
So
my bad, not
so
the
it's not
movies.
that she just went to Canada because she already wanted to go to Canada, and
It's that bar in particular. That's the problem.
Wolverine's in Canada, so it's a little bit set up. It's still a
It's
coincidence,
still a massive coincidence that she happens to go into that bar and Wolverine happens to be fighting at that time.
but it's worth
You
it.
know, like
But it's worth it because the Wolverine Rogue relationship is really good in this movie.
it's great. I love when he leaves her. That's very Wolverine.
Yeah,
I also love the moment where he just pokes her and like she's like, oh, like I love that's pretty funny.
yeah,
And then there's that moment where she goes, I thought my life was crap, and then she turns around and looks at what he's been living in.
yeah. Oh, and I never noticed this before. This was actually something that I noticed for the first time watching this movie today, or I probably noticed it before, but it was the first time it like leapt out at me. There's an explanation in this movie for why she has the silver streak in her hair.
Yes, I was about to
And there
ask
was
you
a
if you'd like
similar, and
that.
there was a similar thing in Apocalypse, where they had the whole thing of Apocalypse trying to take over Xavier's body as an explanation for why he goes bald. I'm like, Brian, you don't have to explain people's hairdos. That's not something that you have to exposit on.
I also love
It makes more sense in
towards
this one because the machine takes a toll on the body, so I can believe it like starting to age her and part of her hair turns gray. It makes sense. It's fine. It's just weird that they went through the trouble of saying that.
it's also dumb because at the very end, Wolverine's like, he points at it and she's like, oh, I like it now. I think I'm going to keep it. And I'm just like, chick, that is like a physical deformity that you're like, oh, I'm all about this. And she's like, it's okay. Take pride if you've got physical deformities, whatever. It's
I
it's a
mean,
good message.
she pulls it off.
Sure, I mean, sure, but
As much as I
it just
love,
struck me as
oh, that's
weird.
another thing you just touched on without even meaning to.
What's good?
As much as I like Rogue in this movie,
It's my favorite thing.
as much as I like Rogue in this movie, God, that's a terrible Southern accent that she's putting. Oh,
Oh,
it's awful. I like it. Oh,
even I could tell. Even I could tell.
oh,
Dylan, who's better? Whose accent is better, mine or hers? Like my weird impression of her I did, or
oh God, I don't even. They're both pretty balls. I don't know.
I like it.
Oh, well, that was a bit more than hers, but oh, I like it. Uh,
Yeah, no, it doesn't work.
nothing will,
She
nothing will,
actually doesn't.
nothing will turn me off in a movie more than a bad Southern accent.
She strangely like disappears from the movie for like 40 minutes.
Do
Like
you
she's
know
like the
about that? Like, do you ever hear like a bad New York accent in a movie, and you're like, ah, like,
no,
really?
because New York accents are bad in person. So it's
It's true.
so it doesn't phase me at all.
Gotta call,
It's also incredibly
gotta call my lawyer. Oh, forget about my lawyer.
that's not really like a New York accent. That's just kind of like stereotypical, like very deep voice. But like like your Wheelers from like fucking Captain Planet,
Oh
and your
no,
Joeys from Yu-Gi-Oh, who have like the same
as
voice.
much as I love him, Raphael. Ugh. Mm.
Raphael's though, but they did that on purpose. They did that to like give him a very certain
Like,
personality. I'm
oh, I'm
okay
a
with that.
total yeah, like,
I love it in the movie though, where he's like,
what do they come up with this stuff?
hey, how do you guys expect to beat me? And then all the all the foot ninjas like drop on him, and he's like, good answer,
Good
good
answer.
answer.
Yeah, I love that.
I love
One
that
where it's like,
moment.
you must be studying the Bridge book of ninja fighting.
Ninja fighting, yeah. I love. Is that a Jose Canseco bat? Tell me you didn't pay money for this. That's fucking great.
I think it would be a I think it would be a great reference in a movie to just have like see a foot ninja like just hanging out at the lair, then just kick back and they're reading the abridged book of ninja fighting.
I'm with you.
It'd be
I'm
great.
with you.
Um,
But I've pretty much said everything I wanted to say about X-Men. What else would you like to say, Dylan?
hmm.
Let's leave no stone unturned here, because we're never going to talk about this movie again.
I mean, I think I've already touched on the major thing, which is the best part about this movie, the thing that carries it, the thing that I think made it a success and paved the way for all of the sequels we've had and for Marvel movies to be a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Which people tend to attribute that to Spider-Man, but again, this came out before Spider-Man.
Oh no,
Um,
this very much so. This is also technically the longest running superhero franchise. I don't know, it's not. Superman has that because Superman Returns is a sequel to
yeah,
Superman 2, and all right, so yeah. But this is like the second one because it's been going on for 16 years now.
yeah, it's pretty impressive. Um, as messed up as it is at points, it's pretty impressive.
We've had 3 different Spider-Men in that time.
Yeah, three different Spider-Man men. And then we've had two Xaviers and two Magnetos in this franchise, and they're still connected. Uh, but
That takes balls.
yeah, I think the thing that really carries this movie past its decent plot, but it's like awkward writing at points, all the things that you've pointed out. I think the thing that carries it and makes it work is the characters, because there is some great characters in here, and really that's always been X-Men's strength. Is that aside from being like really good at tackling like hard topics that you couldn't talk about in other superhero uh, books, X-Men has always been about an ensemble cast, and
Oh yeah, definitely.
they've expanded upon that in movies since this. I mean, obviously this is a much smaller ensemble, but everybody, for the most part, I think does a really good job with what they're given, and I think it just works, man. It works. It's got problems. X2 is way better, but
Oh god, yes.
it's good.
I remember that one.
It's good.
Yeah, I agree. It's good. It's entertaining. It's fun. It's not that long. I think that really helps.
Hmm.
It drags quite a bit. There's not a lot of action is the thing. Like it's very like there's action moments, but because there's so many superpowers and because it's like I said before, there's always a need to make those a set piece. Like there isn't really a big fight scene until the very end. Like Wolverine and Sabretooth don't get a fight early on. Like they just kind of swat at each other for a second and then Wolverine gets knocked
I think
out.
there's a similar problem in the first Spider-Man, or not Spider-Man. There's a similar problem in the
There,
first.
it's definitely in Spider-Man as well though, trust me.
Yeah, but that movie so fucking charming. But
Oh,
there's a
I think that movie is definitely better than
there's a problem.
not
There's a
about that. I
similar
wasn't gonna
problem
say.
in Fantastic Four. Not
Oh, it's
not
way
not Fanforstic, but
Oh
Fantastic
yeah.
Four.
That's what I thought you meant. I was like, "Oh, you're talking about Fan Four Stick? Okay."
No, not Fanforstic. God, no. The Chris Evans practical thing, that guy who's on that show now, Fantastic Four. Um, the guy who plays Mr. Fantastic, he's in this
Oh,
show.
Owen Griffith.
Yeah, he's in this show where he's like a detective, and like whenever he dies, he comes back to life or something.
Oh, yeah, Forever or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I saw that show one time, and I was like, oh, it's Reed Richards, and nobody knew what I was talking about. Uh,
You know, my mom was watching it at one point. I was like, "Oh, I'd like to see a minute of this," and I watched a minute of it. and I was like, "Nope."
yeah, yeah, not that good. But But yeah, there's a similar problem in that movie where you don't really get an action scene until the end.
No, yeah.
Like the whole movie up until that point is set up. I mean, we get to see them get their powers, which is cool, and
Mhm.
there's all sorts of entertaining things of them like learning to live with their powers. There's that great scene in like a parking garage when Doctor Doom kills a guy, but you don't get an actiony bit until the very end. And
It's dated.
I think it's less of a problem in this than in that because you do get actiony bits throughout to hold you over until the big actiony bit, but it's a similar problem I think.
It's dated. It's a bit clunky, simplistic, but it's a miracle this isn't 10 times worse. Because as an adaptation of the X-Men in terms of maintaining those core themes, I think this does a really good job. There's a lot of really interesting and creative uses of the themes of this being an allegory for the civil rights movement, and the idea of fearing things we don't understand, and viewing somebody as different and fearing them because they are different and for nothing else, not looking at somebody for who they are but for what they are.
Yeah.
All of that is done really, really well.
Especially given the time that this came out at. I mean, I think kids today take it for granted that their comic book movies can be comic book accurate because all of a sudden nerd culture is cool and the studios can greenlight anything because it'll sell. Because fucking Guardians of the Galaxy made money. We can do anything we want. At the time,
Guardians made more than a couple of the X-Men movies. How crazy is that?
though, doing a straight up adaptation of the books, it never would have fucking happened. Never
No,
in
no, no,
a
no.
million years would anybody have greenlit that. And so I think for what we've gotten, yeah, for what we had to get, for what it is of its time, I think you're right. I think it's great as an adaptation of that period, an adaptation of that period. If it came out today, there would be all kinds of problems with it being.
Oh no, I think this movie wouldn't be terrible if it came out now, but I wouldn't. If this came out in theaters now with like the special, okay, if you upgrade the special effects and you put this in theaters now, it's a 90s movie made with better special effects,
Yeah,
And that's how it feels.
the
See,
problem is
and
just
if you're not about that,
scale
yeah.
wise, it just wouldn't be able to compete with the superhero movies that are coming out today. That would be.
No, definitely not. But you know what though? Deadpool doesn't have a massive scale either though.
Yeah,
That's pretty limited.
but that's so specific.
That works for that though.
That's yeah,
They use that to its
that's so
advantage.
specific to him as a character. I still haven't seen that movie.
It's great. You should definitely check it out.
Well, we'll probably
Oh, we'll get to it on this, so that's
yeah.
gonna be for a while though. Although I was
It'll
thinking,
be second to last because it'll be before Apocalypse.
well, I was thinking if you, what we could do instead is and this might be awkward, but I think it could potentially work. Is borrow an idea that some other podcasts that review movies have done. Like there's a podcast called James Bonding, which reviews all the James Bond movies, and what they do is they do one old one, then they do one new one. So every time they do a Bond movie, they did Doctor No, and then the next one they did was Skyfall. So I was wondering if you wanted to do something similar. So we did the first X-Men movie. I was wondering if next time you wanted to do First Class and jump into the next trilogy.
You just really want to watch First Class, is why you're bringing up this idea.
But we're not doing this for a while. This is gonna be next season.
Man,
so
that would just drive me crazy, though.
you want to go in order?
Yeah.
All right, we can go in order. I was just bringing that up as an idea.
Not going in order would just infuriate me.
I just wanted to do First Class like soonish because that's the one that I know we both have probably the most to say about because that's the one because that's the one I haven't seen. And anyway, no, that's fine. Let's go in order. That definitely makes more sense. I was just saying that as like,
yeah, and we did this.
Might be nice to spice things up a bit.
We did this, I mean, sort of late in the game on this season. Next season, I'm pretty sure we can knock out like 2 or 3 of these over the course of the season. So it's not gonna.
Oh yeah.
So it's not gonna take us that long to get to First Class.
No, definitely not.
We're only. How
many X-Men movies are there? So there's the first one. There's just X-Men.
There's 1, 2, 3. Origins Wolverine. Then First Class. Then the Wolverine. Then Days of Future Past. Then technically Deadpool. And then Apocalypse. So there's 9 if you count Deadpool. If you don't count Deadpool, which some people don't count it, but it is technically in that franchise and universe. If you don't count Deadpool, then there's 8 X-Men movies. But if counting Deadpool, 9.
Well, I mean, there are X-Men in that movie, so I count it for that reason. And because it's in that universe. It's like, whenever people don't know, like, the classification of the MCU, Marvel Cinematic Universe, I always just have to go, All right, so in the Avengers movies, like that's what you have to do for people who don't know that's what that's called,
Yeah.
But anyway, so that's going to pretty much do it for our thoughts on the original X-Men. This was a really fun conversation. This was a really fun movie to go back and revisit because of its really interesting place in history and how it doesn't really hold up, but it's really interesting and how it doesn't really hold up. So it was a great conversation, man. I loved it.
And
Can't wait to do X2.
And it's a good time. So ultimately, I think the question we should have: do you want to rate these, or do you just want to like give recommendations, or what do you want to do?
I don't really know if I could come up with a rating that would be really solid.
Right.
So I won't do that. If you want to, put a rating on it, definitely. I'll probably just agree with whatever you do anyway, because it seems like we're pretty close on our thoughts on this. But for recommendation, ooh, that's a good question. All right, if you're familiar with this genre, I mean, you've probably already seen it. But if you haven't, or if you haven't seen it in a long time, I would say it's definitely worth a visit because of how influential it was, and also because of how important it is to the genre.
Right.
If you enjoy 90s superhero movies, if you like the Burton and Schumacher Batman movies, which I don't know why you would. No, I like Batman Forever. But I definitely got a very like Schumacher Batman vibe from this sort of.
I like the first 3 of those movies. Returns less
I
so.
like
Returns less so, but there's stuff in it that I like.
I like 2 of them. I like a little bit of 1, I like a little bit of 2, and then I like all of 3, and then 4 just no. I could almost say I like 2.5 because I like things about Batman and Robin. Like I love Bane's costume in
Right.
Batman and
Very
Robin.
comic accurate, isn't it?
It's very comic. It's very accurate to the animated series this time.
I give Batman and Robin an entire point just for Jason Woodrue.
Yeah, sure. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Played by John Glover too. So
Sadly, I don't do well with rejection. I'm afraid you'll have to die.
die. That's so good. So good.
I love it. Oh god,
So good.
that movie.
Can you believe they?
That movie is so bad. I love it.
Oh, it's great. All right.
Reminds
I would.
me of Fred
I would.
Krueger with the power glove. I pick up Batman and Robin. I'm like, it's so bad. And then,
But ultimately, I would say as a curiosity piece, this is worth revisiting. I don't know if much else. There's a couple of jokes in it that are good. A lot of the performances are good. There's some good ideas here, but otherwise, just watch X2.
well, if you're a person who's into this franchise, and maybe you're sort of new to it, maybe you've only seen some of the newer films and you haven't really seen the original X-Men trilogy, the Bryan Singer films, and the third one's technically not a Bryan Singer film, but it's lumped in. Maybe you haven't.
He gets it by proxy.
Maybe you haven't seen the earlier entries. Yeah, definitely. Go watch it. Give you a nice little history lesson on the state of comic book movies in the year 2000, before you could have your cake and eat it too.
You get to see a baby-faced Hugh Jackman.
Because
god damn, he looks different in this. Like I saw a meme the other day that was like,
damn,
it was like Hugh.
You damn kids that grew up in a time where you get to have Howard the Duck and Rocket Raccoon in the same fucking movie. Don't complain to me about comic book movies, motherfucker.
Or you get properly ripped Hugh Jackman instead of weird, soft, mushy Hugh Jackman like we got when we were kids.
Yeah, this is before he started working out, man. Now, whenever
it looks like that, doesn't it? Because Jesus, there are some times where I'm like, I'm buffer than that.
I think it's just because he's famous now for working out when he goes to do an X-Men movie. Like he has his workout routine whenever he goes to play Wolverine.
It's insane.
Is insane.
Yeah.
Because I think they set the bar sort of high in that regard with X-Men Origins Wolverine, because he's fucking ripped in that movie.
He is ripped in that movie.
The first 3 films, not so much.
He's just kind of. Do you think he works?
Think he got ripped in X-Men Origins Wolverine just because he was getting on in years and he wanted to be able to play the part, and now he's expected to be ripped in all these movies. If you go back and watch the first 3, no.
God, Days of Future Past, he is just rippling. Like he's just like. It's insanity. Like it's almost unhealthy. It looks so he looks so ripped.
The Wolverine too. There's a scene where he's being awkwardly bathed by Japanese women, and
Oh, it was like a "you only live twice" moment, where it was like, in Japan, men come first, women come second.
He was enjoying.
And Wolverine go, I might just retire here.
He was enjoying it a whole lot less than James Bond was, though. I gotta say.
Oh, okay.
Pussy. Because in that movie it was all erotic. In this movie it was more like, go clean him up, and they just sort of drag him away, and he doesn't know what's going on, and then they strip him naked and throw him in a tub, and they're scrubbing him and shit.
Is that where do they cut his hair in that scene? Because that seems like a cliche of where you would have somebody get their hair cut.
He has a beard at the beginning of the movie, and he doesn't after that bath.
Oh, I knew it. But he has long hair, doesn't he? Before that as well.
Yeah, I think they cut his hair too.
There you go. I called it.
Yep.
All right. So that's my recommendation. Dylan, did you want to rate it or?
No, I'm not gonna rate it.
Okay, because I'm just like I don't really have like a solid number I can put on it. I only like to put numbers on things now when I really had some time to sit on them and like think about them and like analyze them and sort of write things out.
Right.
Like with stuff like this, with just discussion stuff like this, I'm like any number I put on it is gonna be like superfluous,
If I had to
because
give
it's
a
like
rating, I mean, I'd probably go somewhere middle of the road, like 2 if we were going out of 5, 3 if we were going. I mean, 3 if we were going out of 5, 2 if we were going out of 4. Just very middle of the road type deal.
makes sense.
Great
I'm with
characters,
you.
great characters in a serviceable plot with some really badass moments sprinkled in. Watch this movie just for Mystique, really.
And but she doesn't show up until like an hour and 15 in though, so
Mystique and Magneto, those two, they're great in this film. Anytime they're on screen, you're like, and you get
they're great.
and you get to see how the world fell in love with Hugh Jackman. But
Mm-hmm. And you will.
you will.
Him and his baby face, you will.
But yeah, not nearly a perfect film. X2 is much better, but not nearly as bad as Origins or X3 or.
Oh no, no.
I don't even know how I would compare this to Apocalypse. That's something that I have to sit on for a while because I'm very mixed on Apocalypse, um, and I'm very mixed on this movie too. But I also just have the nostalgia factor.
This has the benefit of coming out when it did and being made under the circumstances that it was.
Right.
Apocalypse had every reason to be amazing.
Right.
And it sounds like it wasn't, so.
Right. Yeah.
Like that movie, everybody was like, "This is going to be incredible," and then no. So.
I mean, it had Oscar Isaac in it, so that was.
Yeah, they had Poe Dameron in it.
That was good. I guess.
Mm-hmm. I guess. All right, Dylan. So I guess
the new chick who plays Storm is very good. That was a good thing about it.
Yeah, a lot of people talked about her being awesome. But I guess that will do it for this week's episode of the Demons from Outer Space. Dylan. So in terms of announcements, the only couple of things I want to mention. Number one, there is a new edition of the Godzilla Odyssey retrospective that you can watch on my YouTube channel. It's there. You can go watch it. It'll be linked in the description below. You can also like the Godzilla Odyssey Facebook page to get those episodes early when they come out every month. We put those out monthly. And I put it up a full 24 hours on that Facebook page before it goes live on Facebook. So if you want to get it a little early, go like that page and you will get it early. Otherwise, just wait 24 hours. It won't be that big of a deal. I'm sure you can wait to hear Dylan and I talk about our own work for an hour and a half. But if not, it's there for you, so you can do that. You can also like the SOS Network homepage on Facebook, as always, for all things SOS. But also, coming up in roughly 2 weeks, our third road trip to G-Fest.
Yes.
Road trip to G-Fest 23. Woo! So that'll be coming up soon.
Also, only 2 episodes of GFOS left this season.
Yeah, we're almost towards the end. But 2 things. So one, Dylan, why don't you tell them? No, we'll save that. We'll save that for when G-Fest happens, because we have a new title for this year's road trip to G-Fest that Dylan came up with that I love. So we'll save that for when the show goes live, though.
When I wrote it in my head, I was reading it in the voice of Mel Brooks, and it was just perfect.
And that doesn't spoil it either. I like it. That was good, Dylan.
Yeah.
You're smooth. You're a smooth motherfucker.
For all I know, it's fucking Blazing G-Fest.
It is Blazing G-Fest. We called it.
Or Young G-Fest, or History of G-Fest Part 1. G-Fest, Men in Titans.
Oh, God.
Or Men in Rubber, I suppose.
G-Fest, G-Fest Dead and Loving It. Oh, God. That's ominous. All right. The only thing I wanted to say... Oh, no, that was it. That was it. But look out for updates on our road trip to G-Fest, both on the upcoming SOS and also on the SOS Network homepage.
Two shakes of a lamb's tail.
Indeed. So look out for that.
I don't know if you realize
as well.
But tomorrow's July. Actually, it's July now. Holy fuck.
Holy shit! You're gonna be here in like a week and a half. Oh my god, I have to put pants on by then.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can do that in a week and a half.
I don't know, man. You don't know. It could be a struggle.
You don't have to pack at that time.
No, I do have to pack, but Not then.
Not as early as I do. You get to pack.
No.
You get to pack 2 days later.
I probably should. I probably should pack by then.
Be a good idea. But yeah,
Yeah, I probably will do it earlier this year.
only 2 episodes of DFOS left for this season. I'll save what the topic is for the final week because that's going to be super interesting. But next week, we're going to finally get into the Universe 6 arc of DB Super. Bill finally going to watch that shit.
Indeed. And Dylan will finally get to talk to somebody about it.
Ah, yes. Andres hasn't
so
been keeping
pumped.
up with the show. I'm like, fuck. I need to talk about it.
We will. We'll do our full podcast in glory. So look out for that next week. We can't wait to get into multiple dimensions and I don't know, Goku shaking the hand of somebody who turns out to be their penis. You know, I can't wait to see that.
Yes.
I'm excited.
That was the highlight of the arc, of course.
Absolutely. All right, Dylan. I bet. I'm gonna be really disappointed if it is now. Like, I'm gonna be really disappointed if that turns out to be my favorite moment. Anyway.
No, it's not gonna be.
I don't think so, based on everything I've heard. I can't wait. So we'll be talking about that next week. Can't wait. Join us for that. But Dylan, is there anything you wanted to say before we wrap up?
Nah, man. Just fucking.
All right.
Excelsior, man.
Bang on, children. Bang on, you bloody ingrates. I couldn't think of a British insult, so I was just like, ingrates. That sounds vaguely British. All right, but until next time, everyone, I'm Bill Worster, aka Zazubaar.
I'm Super DM64.
And as always, dem Germans, they be fucked up.
Hashtag.
But at least edit.
Hashtag always kill Krillin.